All right, and this week, a number of things happened. On Tuesday, there was another strike by the group that calls themselves the Western Togoland and the Volta Regional Capital, who, among other things, with events from last week, some people say it wasn't expected. But for some security analysts, this group has been planning their works for some time now, and so they say that government should have expected the attack on the STC yard in Ho. Now, aside that, the EC also held another round of voter registration. They put aside 1 day for persons who were not able to register during the mass voter registration exercise to partake and register to be able to exercise their franchise on December 7. We'll be looking at that issue as well. And the flooding that happened in Northeast region, hundreds of people have been rendered homeless. Yesterday, the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, had to cut short his tour of the Greater Accra region to go there and send some relief items to them. We'll be looking at solutions to this flooding and also how relief items can be dispatched to these people in time when disaster strikes. So these are the issues we'll be discussing today together with my guests. Before I introduce them, let's look at some of the stories, and we'll go to the Western Togoland issue. Now, alleged members of Secessionist group Homeland Study Foundation attacked the State Transport Corporation in the Volta region. It is alleged that about 2 a.m. on Tuesday, 4 armed men belonging to the group stormed the whole STC yard to demand the keys to the buses parked there. Now, 2 of the minibuses there were set ablaze, and drivers were also assaulted in the process. Now, a reference was made to how last week Friday the group blocked main entry points to the Volta region to press home their demands to create another country they call Western Togoland. Now, here's a report by our correspondent Benjamin Aklama.
Barely 4 days after the attack on 2 police stations within the Volta region, the Mepa police station and the Avema police station, where guns were stolen and the official vehicle of the police and the district assembly in North Tong were taken away. We've had an attack on the State Transport Corporation here in the Volta Regional Capital of Ho. The official, the vehicle, one of the buses of the State Transport Company was touched this night around 1 a.m. towards 2 a.m. by a group of people suspected to have come from the Western Togoland group, or the group advocating for the Western Togoland. And they were here this night firing guns into the air and beating up the security man on duty and setting this vehicle ablaze. The burning of the vehicle extended to the next one, but we understand this was the only one that was set ablaze. The reason why they are doing this is basically that they are advocating for a Western Togoland state. According to them, there was a pre-colonial Western Togoland area which joined Ghana by referendum, and according to them the plebiscite had expired, and so there should be another engagement on that matter, and that's why they're undertaking these activities. The security is currently heavily present here in the regional capital as they are in the North Tong area where the issues had occurred last Friday. Richard Ahiafo is the station manager of the STC here in Ho, and we'll be finding out from him what exactly transpired and what report he's received from his men. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Okay, so tell us, what happened?
Buses being burnt. That's what happened here this dawn, and I was calling to the news, and I usually need to show up. So usually we come early in the morning to load that trade, but then today was another day. My boys called that there were guns being fired everywhere. So usually you are the manager, so you need to show up. And I was here as usual. So basically I got here, my buses were in flames, and we got the fire service to put it off. And as we speak, the security agents are the ones handling the issues, and we are hoping that they do a good investigation and get back to us.
Let's talk about the economic aspect. On a normal day, how much would you have made from here that you have lost today because you've not worked?
In funds, I wouldn't like to put my figures out, but then it's an appreciative figure. And it's very sad that Volta region STC people are now with us and we are making the market, and such a situation will put us off the market for these few days. Maybe today is a day, and we don't hope that this will repeat itself in the near future. So we are talking to the security agencies that are in charge of this case, and we hope from today, maybe later in the evening, you'll see different security setup here to safeguard the properties we have. Other than that, we need to move the buses from here to a safer location to help us. And we are not certain what may happen later in the evening. Yes.
Now, finally, like you said, you are becoming the most preferred means of transport, especially between Ho and Accra. Yeah. What's your word to the community out there who would have wanted to patronize your services today and, have been denied such an opportunity?
We are sorry, and the situation is not our doing, but it's out of our control. We love them, and we hope that when we come back, we'll come in good faith. And we hope, we are just doing this just to prevent the accidents or other things that could happen on the way. Well, our drivers are traumatized because of what happened. So it's not wise to put passengers and their lives at risk. So this is why we need to back off today and maybe tomorrow, depending on what management decides, that we will follow due course. Yes. So customers are number one. Yes.
Thank you very much for your time. We are grateful. So that's Mr. Richard Ahia for his the station manager of the STC here in the Volta Regional Capital Hall. So aside the STC, which is losing business today as a result of the happenings from yesterday night, businesses in the area are also unable to operate today. These businesses largely depend on commuters or people who travel, who come here to purchase tickets and wait on their buses. They purchase from those people, and as you can see, their shops are locked and nothing is happening for them today, and that's because of the happenings. The management of the STC say that they are in consultation with the security agencies and with their top management, and will decide when to resume operations.
So that was what happened on Tuesday. Now, following that incident, the Asogli Traditional Council organized a press conference, and they said that they may be forced to unleash their warriors to help protect the territorial integrity of the state. Now, according to the chiefs, the recent activities of the Homeland Study Group could best be described as criminal and must be treated as such. Let's bring you excerpts of that press conference.
On behalf of the October 14th and the chiefs of Asogli State, I wish to let you know that we condemn the act reported to have been taking place in this region by the Western Togoland group. In no uncertain terms, the roadblocks, the burning of lorry tires in various parts of the Volta region, the attack on the police stations at Mepe and other places, these were criminal acts which we urge the government to conduct investigation and those involved to be made to face the full rigors of the law. And we also advise those people who are doing this criminal act to use the proper channels to address their issues if they have any. The Asogli State Council is ready to deploy the warriors of Asogli State to protect the territories of Asogli State in collaboration with the securities of the nation.
Well, the President, Akufo-Addo, has been speaking about this incident, and he says that government will adequately deal with the secessionist group making claims for an independent state within the country. Now, that was the first time the President was commenting publicly on the matter since reports of the group's violent actions in the Volta region began this year. The President says he trusts the ability of the country's security and intelligence agencies to stop such threats and clamp down on activities of the secessionists.
Yeah, possible Volta region in the time of these handful, there's just a handful of people, these secessionists. We will deal with it. I have no doubt about it. But I don't there's no value for the country if I start making hysterical statements and acting. No, because you can not so much that you can sleep and be complacent or sleep, but at least you can be steady about what is coming. And I trust the security agencies, I trust the armed forces, I trust the police, I trust their leadership, the intelligence agencies. I know they're all working very, very, very hard to make sure that this matter is dealt with as quickly as possible. People reporting to me wherever I am, I'm getting the reports on a daily basis telling me what's going on.
Well, a day after that, the NDC's flag bearer, John Mahama, also commented on the issue, and he accused President Akufo-Addo and his government of not showing seriousness in dealing with the secessionist groups in the Volta region. He said it is time the president showed more commitment in handling the situation.
It's clear that this president hasn't taken this matter seriously. He hasn't. I mean, I don't know, the whole government, the security service, it's like they have a very lackadaisical attitude towards the issue of Western Togoland. There's nothing like Western Togoland. Ghana's territorial integrity is a sovereign matter. No inch of this country must be ceded to anybody. Our constitution makes it clear that we must protect the territorial integrity of Ghana. It's one of the most serious things that the constitution deals with. And that's why when I was president and we had that maritime boundary issue, I did not sleep over it. I didn't want 1 inch of our maritime boundary to be ceded to another country. And so we took definite action. And you could see that there was seriousness in what we did. This Western Togoland thing, I mean, either our security services are so inept or so confused or inefficient, which I don't want to believe. Because I've been commander-in-chief before, and I've worked with these same security services, and I know that intelligence is very key and that they are good at gathering intelligence. This Homeland Study thing was there when I was president, and yet we had people who infiltrated them, and we knew at every stage, you know, what they were up to. But they were doing seminars and press conferences and things, you know. Now they are becoming a bit more, you know, bold, and the president must be taking bold action.
So that's the issue there, and it's time for me to introduce my guest. With me in the studio now is the MPP's parliamentary candidate for Cudjoe. He's still NEIP boss, right?
Yes,
Kuma.
yes.
Good morning. Good to have you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ampadu.
Joining us via Zoom is Chukwuemeka. He's a security analyst. He's also the executive director of WANEP. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. I want to begin with you on this one. What do you make of government's handling of the situation so far?
I think the first thing to appreciate is that this is a very sensitive and delicate matter. It doesn't matter how the government posturing is, however they want to handle it. I'm sure the first thing they understand is the sensitivity of it and how to approach it very technically. So to that extent, I feel that there are two angles to this. The first one is that the Ghanaian government must show authority. It must show its supremacy and its ability to maintain and safeguard the territorial integrity of the country. On the other side is also the avenue and the platform to hear the concerns, the fears, and the issues that is being raised by those who want to secede from a country they have been part of over a long period of time. So I think that the initial step is for government to ensure that it enforces its laws, no matter whose us is God. Of course, that's an initial step. Then, of course, the second step is a dialogue process. Not dialogue that portrays the government from the point of weakness. And that's why the initial step is to show its strength. But a dialogue process that is in tune with the rule of law, that is not negotiating the integrity of the country's territorial integrity.
All right. I'll be coming to you for more on how you want that dialogue process to go, because we've heard from the Vice President, and he says negotiating with this group is not an option. But let me bring in Franklin Cudjoe now. He's the President of Imani Africa. Good morning, Franklin.
Good morning, Madam. Good morning, my good friend in the studio. Good morning, Emeka. Good morning. Good to hear from you guys.
Last week, you were in the Volta region. Am I correct?
Actually, I was in OT.
Oh, okay.
I've never been happy that we were part of OT, by the way. I was in the Volta region. Sorry, well, you can say I was in the Volta region because I passed through the Volta before going to my hometown, which is just 5 kilometers away from Hawaii. Hawaii used to be the border town. That separates us from OT. Separates us from the Volta. Yes, I was.
I'm taking your comments on this, how this issue has panned out since last week and the incident that was recorded on Tuesday.
Well, while on my way there, though, I mean, I saw a motley few actually, I saw a semi-army column that was preparing to, I suspect, ready for action. By the time we got to Japan, by the way, there wasn't much action. I mean, I'm using action here advisedly. So we didn't see any of the untoward behavior. But of course, we got talking. We spoke to one or two of the security forces, and they said, well, things are calmer, but they are on the lookout for any surprises. I must say that I am in tune with the statement that have been made by the various authoritarian groups, from the chiefs to various interest groups, as well as the political groups, that look, these matter must be dealt with, one with force and also with tact. As Emeka suggested, you do not want to be seen as a weak negotiator. And again, you do not want to have a gunboat type of diplomacy where you are putting a gun to the heads of these persons to say, well, stop what you are doing, otherwise we'll flush you out. Because the story about the way these things have conflagrated, really, in other parts of the world, is that they start this way, and then if you do not act reasonably with them, then they become something else. And so, yes, there must be that understanding that this is a red herring, something that is based on an illegitimate concern. I would have thought that if the concerns were economic of nature, then maybe, yes, they may have some issues to raise. But even then, you do not go attacking state institutions, really, in order to press home your point. Something also is emerging, that some of these characters may not necessarily emanate from the region. Something I suspect the security services must be looking out for. But otherwise, the president's posture is right. I think he doesn't need to be making statements that would flare our passions, but at the same time, you must be seen to be decisive and speak to the matter. Much as he's spoken at, he spoke to the issue in a radio conversation. His trusted advisors, in this case, the Ministries of Interior and the Ministry of Defense, must be heard. I don't like this whole arrangement where the Minister of Information is the one giving us information. This is a security matter. I don't want watered down information. I want to hear from the horse's own mouth. That also instills some sort of force and discipline, right? And it shows that the country is at peace with its stuff. Otherwise, I'm not saying the authority of the information minister should not be regarded, but he's really a minion when it comes to the whole government of this issue as far as security is concerned. So we want to hear from the interior minister, the defense minister, the security minister, or indeed with the forces sitting behind them, showing full support, because this is an election year. And one of the things I suspect, which is difficult for the government right now, is that this is a region where they unfairly packed a lot of security services ahead of the registration process. And so now it's a bit difficult now to be seen to be saying that, well, look, I have the interests of these people at heart. I can understand the difficulty, but look, they should not cede any grounds at all to showing some seriousness and to deal with the issue. It's a difficult situation, I admit.
Let me come to the studio now. We have been joined by our guests from the NDC, Kpakpo Samoa Addo. He's a member of the NDC. You're welcome.
Thank you.
John Kuma is still here. So I'll start with you on this. The activities we are seeing by this group, it didn't start today. How did we get here?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me also say good morning to my learned friend Ni, and to Franklin Cudjoe, my brother, and our security consultant, of course, to your beautiful self. The history of this Western Togoland, as we all know, when the Germans were defeated, I think in 1914, the British took over that area. And when Ghana was about to gain independence, it became part of the British-controlled area in Africa. You know, most of our continent, I mean, you remember the scrabble for Africa, where they sat in Berlin and divided our continent onto themselves. So in 1956, a plebiscite was held, and I think majority of the population decided to be part of the then Gold Coast, which was going to become independent. Since, I mean, I think plebiscite was May 1956, by December 1956, that part had become part of Gold Coast. And on 6 March, when independence was declared, they became part of Ghana. And we have lived together as one country since that time. However, occasionally you find few elements trying to attack the sovereignty of our nation, and you know, they usually will get backing from certain foreign elements. And I think in 1976, a law was passed in Ghana. I think there's a, let me see if I can find the act. Let me refer to the act.
Okay.
Prohibited Organization Act 1976. That's SMCD 20. And it's specifically related to this Togo. Let me read: Prohibition of Togoland Liberation Movement, etc. I mean, of course, not just them, but there were other groups within Ghana that also didn't want to be part of the bigger unitary government that we had. So, but this particular act, SMCD 20, was in specific reference to the Togoland Liberation Movement. And it spells out clearly that the following organizations are hereby declared unlawful and prohibited.
Okay.
Namely, the organization known variously as the Togoland Liberation Movement, the National Liberation Movement of Western Togoland. I mean, they always come up with different. I've heard a new name, Homeland Security, something. So they keep changing their form and coming back on this same matter. But under this act, it is an offense, and there's a penalty to it for anybody who seeks to join their campaign or be part of the activities. So far, let me thank the leadership of our country, including President Mahama and the traditional leaders of the Volta region, for their firmness and believing in the sovereignty of our country, that we are not prepared to cede an inch of our country to any group of people. And I think whatever is going on at the moment, of course, is going to be dealt with as the president has directed. And let nobody begin to begin to think that they can cause the stability of Ghana. Sometimes there is some geopolitics into these matters, and it is not in our collective interest as a nation, as Ghanaians, whether MPP or NDC. There are sometimes certain interest groups behind the scenes who do not wish for a stable Ghana or a stable West Africa sub-region. Look, a time came almost every country in Sub-Saharan Africa was in one form of conflict or another. And once they read our history and they think that they can engineer certain forms of conflict, they've seen Ghana, especially in the Fourth Republic, become very stable. I mean, one government handing over to another government, and since 1992 to now, we have not seen any instability in our country, and gradually, if you watch, we have been developing gradually, and we are seeing a lot of improvements in our livelihood. That is not good news for certain people who don't have good plans for our continent and for our country. And they may be willing to hide behind certain elements to create some of this confusion. Remember, we have only about 60 plus days to another election. And some people think if they could destabilize the political process, or if they can do something that will create an impression that Ghana, after all, is not that peaceful, that the impression that the world has about Ghana and West Africa is not as peaceful as we want them to believe. So they may want to go behind certain elements. Look, I'm happy that the traditional authorities of the area do not support such a movement. That means that they don't even have the support. Who are they fighting for? First of all, the owners of the land, the Kwamufie traditional authorities and the voter traditional authorities, none of them is backing them. So you can see that it's just some few disgruntled elements that are being used to cause mayhem. And of course, if you look at their modus operandi at the moment, all they are looking for is attention. Let's create mayhem. Let's go and burn down state vehicles. Let's attack state installations. All that they are doing is to look for attention and to create a certain semblance of the instability. And that is why I agree with the president that there's no need to panic on this matter. Let the security agencies take control and fish out these few disgruntled elements and deal with them by the law. Of course, if you are also not careful and you overreact, you are likely to create a certain situation that may lead to some sympathy for people to now begin to listen to them. Meanwhile, they have no case. I mean, they are part of Ghana, they enjoy free SHS, they enjoy every good thing that this country has to offer. If it's electricity, water, everything that we give in this country, they equally benefit from it. They vote in our elections. The last time the EC opened the voter register, I'm sure they all went to register as Ghanaians. So we must not entertain these things, and there are laws to already deal with it. This didn't start today. And like I stated, in 1976, Ghana had to enact a law to prohibit all such organizations. There's one statement that President Mahama has made that I'm particularly happy with. He said, what will be left of Ghana if every group decides to take a portion out? So tomorrow the Ashantis also stand up and said, okay, we don't want to be part of Ghana. The Dagombe start and said we don't want to be part of Ghana. Then what is left of Ghana? So we must all protect the integrity and sovereignty of our nation. And on this particular matter, I want my friends in the NDC, in fact, so far, I think, especially with the leadership, they have dealt with this matter as Ghanaians. And we must stick to that position, support the chiefs and traditional leaders on the fact that we are one nation and we are not prepared to give an inch to any illegal groupings in our country.
Me?
Yes, good morning. Good morning to my learned brother and good friend. I can't but agree with him and as far as express the position of our party leader and presidential candidate who has stated that if every group in Ghana were to ask for to be given, to be let go, you know, we will not have a Ghana because Ghana is a unitary state and we were carved out of a combination of different areas that have come together to what we now call Ghana. Our territorial integrity is important as a country. And so the government has a responsibility, just as all of us, the political players and actors, to maintain that territorial integrity of Ghana. And so any attempt to secede is not something that any party must condone or encourage, because today you are in opposition, tomorrow you are in government, and the stability of the country is one of the most important functions of any government or any president. You imagine that as president, all you hear about Ghana is, you know, in your presidency, one rebel activity here and there. Number one, your country will be listed as an unstable country, and so investments will suffer. Your image will suffer. Your economy will suffer because resources that must be there. And anytime there is a problem, let's say up north in terms of tribal conflicts, in government will tell you the amount of money that is pumped into, because these are unplanned budgetary expenses. Moving troops around is not a joke. You have to think about their feeding, allowances, even the stability or the way they destabilize the normal activities of the persons in the area. It's a problem. So that's why even the chiefs in the area are complaining, because when you mass up troops in a particular area, troops are meant for fighting. There's the police that are meant for normal day-to-day civilian. So that friction between the citizens and the military is bound to happen if you concentrate them there, because they have to do cordon off, do swoops. They do things that normally they wouldn't do if there was no need for it to be done. But we can't compromise on our security, and all the steps that must be taken to ensure that this thing does not gain roots, because they start off with some protests, and then some demonstration, and before you realize, now we are burning cars, state property. Before you realize, they actually went around taking over police stations and all that. Imagine they do this on election day or pre-election. It's a problem. And so I think that the Regional Security Council must step up their intelligence. I think whatever you do, there was some form of, well, they wouldn't even want to say that the regional minister says they were aware, that they minimized whatever, but still, if it could have been prevented, you understand?
You don't think they were on top of the issue?
No, I think there was a lapse. The fact that certain things even happened, the fact that they were able to take over police stations, they were able, and had to take reinforcements, meant that there must have been some intelligence failure, because if you knew that they were about to do something, there could have been steps taken to prevent it from taking off. You understand? So you pick up the key elements. And remember that there are some who are saying from that same area that the persons who are perpetrating these things are not from the area. And that raises other issues. It means that we have to link up with our neighbors in Togo and in La Côte d'Ivoire. La Côte d'Ivoire will be on the other side. So it seems that this Togo perhaps is our most important neighbor that we have to link up with to find out where these are coming from. Remember also that there is this problem from Mali coming down to Ghana, where because of the problems in Libya, there's a free flow of arms through Mali into this side of West Africa. And we're already facing a problem with extremist groups who are causing a problem up north. So our borders up north are actually a problem area for us now. They're already operating in Nigeria, operating in the Chad, operating in so that area already have a joint military operations team that is trying to work on them. Perhaps it's about time Ghana, Togo, Burkina Faso, and maybe those of us immediately around have a joint task force that will look at dealing with these problems, because immediately it takes root, we'll have a problem. And it looks like we are getting there. I mean, I'm reassured that the president says that we're on top of the security situation and that, he's doing whatever it takes, and that doesn't want to alarm us. We are happy about that. But beyond the words, I'm hoping that we will not allow this thing. Talks about negotiations and all those things must not, perhaps these are things that can be done in the background, but they should not be things that we should be seen to be giving legitimacy to this group. Immediately we do that, we are going to have problems, because there are other groups who also, feel that for some reason the national cake is not being fairly distributed in a way. If we allow this to take root, we are going to face a very, very serious problem. So I think the stick and the carrot approach is important, but whatever is done must be done in a way that maintains the national integrity of Ghana without compromise. So we should, and one other thing I think the Attorney General should do is do prosecution. I think the first phase where we kind of, allowed the political leadership, which we identified, the old man and his.
You're talking about the March incident?
Yes, the March incidents. We've had 2 different occasions where they were taken to court. The first time when the first group was taken to court in the Volta region, they were released with a warning. Then we came back to Accra, we flew them down. The trial almost started because that was one of the few times where the 3-panel judges at the High Court sat to begin the process, and then the charges were dropped. I think at that stage, perhaps because of the age factors and other health issues, we thought that. But it seems this thing is getting out of hand. We need to deal with the political leadership and this. There are evidence on Facebook, social media about groups being trained. They have training camps. Some of them are even bold enough. There's a gentleman who has he of course you can't identify, but the security agencies can't because he's on social media. They display training. This is not something they hide.
The police arrested some of the people they were training some months back.
No, that was the month. But in recent times, they keep giving pictures of. Maybe I'll give some of this information on Facebook.
They advertise that the Ghana Army is recruiting.
Yes,
and get people to apply to that, and then they are taken to a hideout to train them. So yes, they've been identified.
And recently they keep claiming that batches upon batches are graduating. You see, so this is not some group that is hiding.
Yeah.
And so the security agencies must be on top of it. If you go to these camps and you cannot, as a young person, see that what you are going to get yourself into is a problem, then we deal with you. If we have a deterrent approach towards this thing, I think that it will help, because people perhaps don't realize that because we don't have treason trials in Ghana often, people don't understand the serious consequences that go with being tried for treason. And maybe when we do 1 or 2 of these trials publicly, it will send the necessary messages down that if you're a young person in that area and you indulge yourself or engage yourself in these things, you have problems.
Emeka, from what happened last Friday and Tuesday's attack at the bus station, do you think government has shown that authority and tact in dealing with the activities of this group?
I think already the gentleman in the studio already pointed out to the fact that because this is not just something that happened, that there could have been a lapse in the security architecture and also intelligence. And therefore, one would imagine that because this is a sore issue, that the security agents will have some kind of community early warning mechanism that enables them to get information and be on top of the issues. But be that as it may, I think it's important to also understand that the philosophy behind this kind of secessionist groups is that it is value-based, and therefore, whether the security is on top of their matter or not, sometimes they come out very boldly because they are driven by some kind of ideology that you cannot even explain. And sometimes there are even issues that even if you go deeper, you will find it difficult to even justify. Now, it's also important what the colleagues in the studio said, that we need to look at it. The first thing is that there have been this conspiracy theory that each time West Africa wants to move forward with its union, that we begin to notice this kind of issues. At the moment, we are being told, rightly or wrongly, that the issue of the monetary policy, the ECO, is the target. Whatever can be done to destabilize the union should be done at all costs, because everybody knows implication that once you have a West African market that enables our citizens to see the community as one, then it increases the potentials of the region and also begin to reduce the influence of some of our external partners and sometimes ex-colonial masters on the region. And this is an allegation that a lot of people have carried out research on and substantiated to a large extent, and nobody have been bold enough to even dispute that. So that's something that the government need to look at, and that's why I agree with the colleague that talked about coming together to have a common front in dealing with this issue. The other thing also to look at is not just the posturing of government, because, like I said earlier on, it doesn't matter how the government decides to tackle this issue. There must be people that feel that it is not the right way to tackle it, and the other people feel that this is the right way to deal with it. So those two approaches are very key. It is important to get local experts that will analyze this issue and understand, because we cannot run away from the fact that there is a trust deficit between citizens and the state. So some of the assumptions that drive this philosophy and ideology need to be unpacked, and people need to understand how true or untrue it is, because those who are behind this also have their weapon, and their weapon is to indoctrinate. And once they get to that extent and begin to recruit, I was listening to one of the radio stations yesterday, and a gentleman, I think that was Joy, and a gentleman phoned in and said, I am a member and I'm in support of this movement. And when he was asked, what is the source of your information? He said, I read it from the internet and I believe it is true. So that's how bold they are becoming. So they are driven by an ideology that, yes, we cannot justify that. Yes, we cannot substantiate that. But yet, that's the way they are driven. And the last speaker talked about violent extremism. That's the way they start. So if you apply too much force, then you push them to the level where they now become extremists. And if you apply very soft approach, then they think they have their way. So it requires tact. It requires tact.
Franklin, the issue of... yeah.
Sir, go ahead.
I was asking about these concerns of young people there. How do we deal with some of them not falling prey to the doctrines of this group? We have identified that it is not right. We are one country. How do we change that and prevent that from happening?
Well, the first principles would assume that these persons, young persons who want to be recruited into these rather arcane groups, must be taught the issues of patriotism. And patriotism would also mean that they must be inclusive in terms of the spoils of development. I'm not making excuses for their actions, but I suspect that patriotism, knowing what the creed of Ghana holds in its anthem, and the fidelity we pay to it actually does matter. Secondly, I think we need to continue the path of trying to spread economic opportunity. I think Mr. John Kuma's NEIP has been making efforts towards that. And I think that somehow some of these must be intensified. But I must say something, which I suspect has also been said by our three fellow panelists, but it must also be pointed out. They talk about the fact that there are very agent provocateur groups and then opportunistic groups that are waiting to pounce on the otherwise glaring prosperity of West Africa. Well, part of that story may be true, but the other part that is also quite true is that West Africa has never seen any unity when it comes to building our collective economic forces. And I talk about economic integration. I do not realize, we must also realize abundantly that since West Africa, ECOWAS was formed in 76 or 75, I think, the issues around movement of persons and goods have not been particularly paid attention to. They normally get to pay attention when they become overwhelmed by maybe infiltration or of let's say people who have got the opportunity to trade in our respective in our respective countries. I must say that the security of the country of the region is dependent on the economic wherewithal of the region as well. So that when politicians within West Africa tend to pull at each other, tear each other apart, because the end in sight is essentially power grab and indeed what I call the winner takes all mentality. What happens is that they create a number of cells that are then pounced upon by opportunists like the ones we are experiencing from the Sahel region. Right, it was General Nokwenu who told us, we used to do seminars in most parts of Africa, and the one we did in Ghana in 2009, and I invited him to speak to the students on how to prevent coups. If I had to identify coups and how to stop them, it was an interesting topic. I think I still have the video. There was one thing he said that was very instructive. Don't forget, General Nokwenu led the Kuma forces in Liberia, and he shares a very funny story. That he went in there saying that, well, I'm going there with 500 men and I'll come back with 500 men. But by the time the guns started flying across, they started running for cover. But he was saying something that was also profound. Now look, you underestimate the likes of Charles Taylor, who started the same way these groups have started. And he underestimated the power and the force of the rebels in Liberia. But there was something profound he said as well, which is akin to the examples I was giving about the governance and economic governance, political and economic governance in West Africa, which is to the point that when you start fighting amongst yourselves, when the man and the woman begins fighting, I'm quoting him, paraphrasing him. When the man and the woman start quarreling, when you start quarreling with your wife, and it comes outside, well, others may take notes and may be making passes at your wife. This was his analogy. Then he talks about the Greek analogy as well, where the Greeks were too complacent and they did not realize that they had created for themselves a Trojan horse, which was then infiltrated by outsiders. So the point is, once West African governance, politicians see at each other and did not focus on building the collective interest of their citizens, then it gives rise to these opportunistic dinosaurs. And Nigeria is a perfect example. Nigeria spent billions, actually collected billions on the West in order to fight Boko Haram. Rebecca will tell you, and I'm sure he knows the story, a lot of that money ended up being swallowed in the stomachs of politicians. When the rebels got to know, well, they only got emboldened and intensified their efforts. So while we were crying that we should bring back our girls, when the Boko Haram people had raided them, there was something else that we were not talking about, which was the corruption when it comes to economic governance, and indeed even with our security that is usually not done properly. There are examples in Ghana as well, but for the purposes of peace and very good conversations, I do not want to get into those rare areas.
All right, let me come back to the studio. John, former President Mahama says, you know what, the Akufo-Addo government is not being serious in handling this matter. We saw signs of these attacks way back, and based on the government's posturing, nothing has been done, and that's why we are seeing these recent attacks.
Well, I totally disagree with him on that. And I've told you I agree with some of the comments he has made in respect of the need to be united as a country, and why we must take decisive action in terms of protecting the sovereignty of our country. But I can tell you, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo and the NPP government are fully in charge of this country.
Are we not being reactive?
Oh, well, I don't think so. Of course, if there is no way, my learned senior is here, he will tell you that no matter what laws you enact or how active your judiciary is, there will still be crimes in the country. If a group of people decide to go and conspire to ban STC vehicles or attack certain installations, yes, you may be able to pick up intelligence. And of course, we have seen under this government where a group of people in a period of about 15 months tried to plan to destabilize the country. Eventually, they got infiltrated and arrests were made. Some of them are facing prosecution. So we cannot say that this government is not on top. But the nature of this particular matter, looking at the historical antecedents and the kind of activities, I mean, these are a group of people who go with no arms to attack a police station, then pick the police vehicle, and then run in town with the police vehicle. So Even
they injured the commander.
Yes, they injured the commander. They attacked the commander and did that. But you see, so it will be very difficult to predict these people. They are not even an armed group. They don't have the arms. They come to attack you bare hands with their philosophy and chanting, and then they take over whatever you have to attack you. So I agree with the president that as much as we want to deal with this matter, let us find a middle ground. And of course, those who say we should be more harsh, I agree with them, because it's annoying. Okay. Sometimes it's very infuriating looking at the activities of these people, and especially when you find their background and what they stand for, you even get more angry. But in the midst of all that, you also have a country to contain and build it together as one people. So we must find a middle ground where we avoid this criminality and cut out some of this extremist behavior by certain few group of people, and then at the same time ensuring that nobody takes the peace of the country for granted and maybe the leniency of the government for granted. For instance, you see, Ni spoke about the previous possible trial of their leader, a 70-something-year-old man who came on front of the front pages of Daily Graphic, and that day I looked at the paper and I'm like, please, let's have mercy on this old man before he even dies in court. So yes, initially we all had a certain kind of calm approach to the whole matter, especially looking at who was leading it. But it appears the leniency of the government, it didn't work. It didn't work. So that's fine. We can, on the benefit of hindsight, say that, well, government, you are being too complicit in this matter. Why don't you be more decisive? Yes, but I'm very much assured that based on the facts available at the time and the actions taken by the government, we thought could be interpreted by these people as, well, but after all, they are not really against us, so why are we fighting? You understand? So that we could build a certain level of consensus. If that is not working, and we are seeing more young people being recruited and they are beginning to cause distraction and criminality, of course, an equal and opposite action will be taken by the government. And I hope the same people will not come back to say, why is the government being so high-handed in handling this matter? So I think that nothing has gone too bad, even though it's a wake-up call. And looking at certain actions and incidents that they have taken is a huge wake-up call for government to be firm and decisive. And then, of course, at the same time, I listened to Lord Boateng of the United Kingdom. He was explicit in saying that there is a foreign power behind these people to cause instability in Ghana. And he actually went ahead to give certain information. And that's why I was saying that when you look at all these things, and of course, look at the sub-region, you go to Nigeria. Recently, I saw a certain demonstration by the Biafran group. All of a sudden, they are beginning to rise up to, you know, something that led to civil war in Nigeria that has gone to sleep for a while. They want to bring it up. Now we are beginning to see these elements in Volta region trying to spring up. So there are a certain group of people who think that Africa, and especially West Africa, must not rise. And our prosperity is not in their good interest. And so they must find a way to always make us handicapped, come to them begging. And when they hear us talking about we developing beyond aid, then they are even upset. So this is where we have to come to ourselves as people, as one people, as Ghanaians, and see how we can explain. I'm happy when my brother Franklin Cudjoe spoke about patriotism and the fact that we must do more on that front in conscientizing especially the youth and young people in school in that part of our country to believe in the Ghana as a nation and what they stand to benefit and their responsibility to the growth of that nationhood. I think we should do more in wake of these activities so that we can stay together as one country and build our own prosperity as a nation.
We heard from the chiefs of Asogli states.
Yes.
They say that they may be forced to unleash their warriors to protect the people.
God bless them.
It looks like
God bless them, and that is what gives me a lot of assurance that the other conspiracy that these people misbehaving in that region are not Votarians or they are not Ghanaians from that part of the region could be true. Because these are the traditional leaders. They know their people. And if they were concerns that their people had, they will be the first to bring it out. So it means that these are foreign elements that have been brought in to create a certain impression about the country. And I want to thank the traditional leaders for their bold decision. And look, I think government, especially the military and police, should find a way to collaborate and partner with the local people to see how best we can arrest some of these elements that come in to create confusion.
I see you not me.
Yes, I agree, because you see, they called out the regional minister, for example. They were very furious.
Yeah.
They said that, look, we are the people in the area, and we are telling you, because it creates a certain impression as if they have themselves secessionist activities or they have secessionist intentions. And it is not good for their own image.
At all.
You understand? And then there's that political flavoring to it, and it creates, so they have been very clear that they are not condemning these activities, because you see, the military interventions in the area disturb their way of life.
That's true.
These are border trading towns. Imagine even the closure because of the COVID has affected trading activities severely for them. They are able. There are some places where I understand you wake up in Ghana and go to your farm. And these are practical for them. These are people that some of the kids go to school in Togo. Some students from, and they consider themselves Ghanaians because they have relatives. They have to attend funerals. They have to. It's very interesting. There was a map that was drawn by a gentleman who was trying to highlight how artificial the boundary. So he flew a drone and did a digital drawing, and it's so interesting. If you see the shots, there are schools. There's one part where the school is in Ghana. Ghana is the only side that has a school, and the other side, the other side of it does not have a school. So everybody comes to school in Ghana, and then there's one side that and the hospital is on this side. It's so interesting, and the border line, artificial border line, runs through people's houses. So one part of the house is in Ghana, the other part is on the other side. So it's so artificial on the borders themselves that if the persons at the borders don't flush out these guys, they are going to cause them problems. And this is an intelligence-led operation. The soldiers from Accra or from wherever don't know these people. You can't even differentiate because of the language, because they speak
the same.
But those who live there can tell you the dialect. So that's what the chiefs were speaking to, that the dialects that the persons who ran over the police stations and other places were speaking a particular dialect that was not local to them, and that they were foreign. And so if they've been able to establish that, the Minister of National Security, I'm sure, is on top of his game. The Chief of Defense Staff and all that, they need to move. Defense intelligence is there. This must be an intelligence-led operation where they perhaps, they know what they have to do. I mean, these are things that we don't need to tell them.
Come back. I need to take a break here. We'll continue the conversation on the activities of these groups, the Homeland Study Foundation or the Western Togoland. This is the big issue on CITI FM. We'll be back with more.
Representing a country is no small feat.
Because in Ghana, the love for Israel is so real, People are nursing it from home, from churches, and then you are walking in such a positive atmosphere and all the doors are open for you.
View the lives of the diplomats in Ghana through their very own eyes and see how they made Ghana their home.
I always loved it. I love the remains of African culture in Brazil. I am very interested in the way Africans were able to, amidst those horrible conditions, they were capable of transforming their African heritage.
Join me, Apioko Sarah Mashong Abe, on Diplomatic License every Saturday at 5 p.m. only on CITI TV.
You're welcome back. The program is The Big Issue on CITI FM. Hello to our viewers on CITI TV. Thank you for joining us. We are looking at the issues surrounding the activities of the Western Togoland, the group that has caused some series of attacks over last week and this week. Our guests are Franklin Cudjoe, President of Imani Africa, Kpakpo Samoa Addo is a member of the NDC, John Kuma is the NPP's parliamentary candidate for Ejoso, and also Chukwuemeka Eze, he's a security analyst. You can be part of the conversation by sending us a WhatsApp message or text message on 0550-585832, 0550-585832. or on 0549-986-996, 0549-986-996. If you send us a WhatsApp, a message on social media, do add the hashtag The Big Issue, and we'll be reading them with the rest of the world. Let me return to you, Chuku. We are looking at resolution. You mentioned that these groups, they need to be handled well, and I remember you also spoke about dialogue. What should be the approach in government's discussions and trying to resolve this issue with the secessionists?
I think already there is an opportunity which already is mentioned by the colleagues in the studio, which is the traditional rulers. I think they should be able to lead that process. And some of the things that you might also know is that they have also tried to bring in the issue of neglect, government neglect, as part of what they consider to be one of their grievances. So what happens when there is, you know the story of Mali, when you have ungoverned spaces, so it begins to give the audacity for this kind of group to begin to also mobilize on the basis of such sentiments. So if the issue of equitable distribution of resources is part of what they feel is inducing them to do what they are doing, I think it's something that is worth listening to. But like we said earlier on, it shouldn't be that they are holding government to ransom. No, they can't hold government to ransom. They can't also determine for the state what they need to do. But that angle, because you need a new narrative. I think my brother from Imani mentioned it already. You need a new narrative to counter their own narrative. And that new narrative is the sense of the patriotism he mentioned. If you don't have another narrative to counter it, then whatever kind of indoctrination they are giving becomes the truth. So that kind of dialogue that is organized, even if the states don't want to lead it so that they don't have to be seen as though they are begging, they can go through the traditional rulers. They can also get interlocutors that will deal with them. You see, why am I saying this? The colleagues have referred to Nigeria as an example. The issue of Boko Haram, I still feel that if the state did not approach it with absolute power and force, probably they may have had a better result. And you don't have to also rule out the fact that there is the market for these people to thrive. A very lucrative market. It comes with a lot of things: gun running, drug trafficking, and so on and so forth. So it is lucrative. And once, I think, again, Frank mentioned that once you create that opportunity, once your state is destabilized, right, then there are people who are beneficiaries. They are conflict entrepreneurs. So they benefit from destabilized societies. And that's not something that anybody wants. So no matter how you approach it, it is important to come with the two.
For a country that is going into elections in less than 70 days, what should be the posturing of security agencies and also the government and the politicians? Because already people are propagating various theories coming on the back of the army deployment at that area during the voters registration exercise.
Well, my opinion is that you need to have a country to be able to have an election. So it doesn't matter how people look at it. If crime is crime, it doesn't matter when it is committed. So whether you want to win more votes when people are trying to question the sovereignty of your nation, I don't think it doesn't make any sense to me. So it's unfortunate that it's coming at this particular point in time, but it is not enough reason. The election is not enough reason to postpone the response. Government needs to assure the citizens that they are safe and secured. So it's that simple.
Franklin.
When Emeka spoke about the people profiteering from these activities, it reminded me about the movie I watched called The Lord of War, Nicolas Cage. And if you watch that movie, you come to understand how interesting and thriving this trade is. Some aspects of that movie will tell you that he's always, as a marketer, this Nicolas Cage, on the lookout for places where there are intelligent squabbles. So then he makes forays into that area and then tries to sell arms. The fact of the matter really is that we should be seen to be motivated enough to build our capability of our defense forces to withstand these kinds of activity. Because trust me, those who are motivated to sell arms to groups like this are already thinking what to do next and how to benefit from maybe the international transfer money system, or probably use bypasses so that they can make these monies look clean. So it's a combination of factors. You want to deal with the issues around illicit financial flows. You want to look at counter terrorism activity, but more so build the capability of your defense forces. West Africa, somewhere last year, ECOWAS decided that they were pulling to, actually the Sahel region, the Sahelian region, leadership of the Sahelian region decided to pull together funds to the tune of $1 billion in order to stem the tide of these, this rebel activity. I haven't heard much about that. I think when West African leaders met in Accra, I was also waiting to hear that beyond the Mali problem, there must be a coordinated attempt, including resources, to build the defense and the forces of the respective armies. And they must focus on making sure that the procurement process, as always, is above board. Because clearly speaking, sometimes there are people these are not people who just benefit from the war, who are external actors, even people in government, not this government per se, but within the sub-region, we've seen the number of army generals profiteering at the expense of, saving livelihoods and lives. So I think it must be a coordinated attempt. There must be no shortage of, preaching patriotism and the rule of law. But we must also acknowledge the fact that I think the lawyers there would admit and would probably remember this, that the rule of law cannot be propagated on an empty stomach. We need to find out exactly why these things are happening, and if they are indeed happening, what is motivating them. Because the moment we decide that we must deal with it in a brute manner, well, then, as Emeka is suggesting, we may be losing the plots. So it's a combination of factors, but trust me, we must be very wide awake. And I think that it's important that we shouldn't let only Westerners see this as an opportunity. I think somewhere before the pandemic broke, we were contacted by a group within NATO that had wanted to have conversations with us, as well as I think ONEP, and then I'm sure the other agencies. Kofi Annan said that to have a conversation about how to mobilize funding to deal with this threat. But in that letter, there was something that struck me, which was also there's supposed to be a conversation about economic sustainability, because I suspect these people understood, even though they were coming from outside this region, understood that security issues go hand in hand with, if you like, livelihoods. I mean, issues around rebel activity, and it's important that we do that. We should check and look at the history of illicit drug trading as well, because these things fuel all these kinds of activities. So these are not normal times, and frankly, I don't want to be in the shoes of the president, but I think that there must be some decisiveness as well as tact as well.
Do you think his comments are assuring enough for the people in the region and also Ghanaians at large who are concerned about these acts of violence being perpetrated by the group?
His leadership style, though, probably doesn't want to be frontal, and he's also mindful it's an election year. But if I were president, I would definitely put the men in charge of security all to be speaking, and not necessarily speaking every day, but must be seen to be the ones showing some level of force and indeed some authority. So far, I don't know if I've heard the National Security Minister. I've not heard any of them. Maybe they may be working on the quiet.
He led a team to the place yesterday.
Oh, that's beautiful. They should come back and report to the entire country and be reassuring. Not just, you see, the thing about these things is that they should just focus on the Volta region. Because the way it is, if these guys are really motivated by outside forces, they are looking at other patches of the country as well, and then try to do all kinds of things. So the activity must be, we must actually raise our antennae, but we must do so being mindful of the fact that there's also an election. But anyway, as Mireka has said, if there's no country, there can't be an election.
Let me bring in some of the messages that our viewers and listeners have sent in. Good morning, Abena. I'm from the Volta region, and Papavi is a known person who speaks on many radio stations in the region when it comes to history-related stories. How then do we refer to such a person as terrorists? I think the approach and the comments from the authorities alone can't deal with these people. We might not see them as a small group of people and think they have no concern. That's from Thomas in Amasaman. Kweku in La Paz. Okay, Kweku, I cannot read your message. Nana Amwako says Ghana has actually no boundaries, and that is a security threat. Yao from Dawenya says former President Mahama must not politicize this Western Volta separatist issue. My household and I will not vote for him if he does. Bernard from Medina writes, in fact, the issue of the Western Togoland is mind-boggling, and for that matter, we, the Ghanaian people, should distance ourselves from this unpopular decision. Kwesi in Kasua, government should lure the secessionists into negotiation and then arrest them and jail them for life. Those secessionists already arrested, are they Ghanaians, you ask? What language do they speak? What is their identity? Government should be serious in dealing with them by not giving them an inch to operate. Some people seem to think that based on former President Mahama's comments on the matter, he's trying to politicize this issue.
No, we are being a responsible opposition. You would agree that he has not given any political support to this group. It could have been the other way around, where he would have said, or could have said, that, well, they had, some legitimate political, but we've stood as a nation, and we've said that under no circumstance should we give any group the opportunity, space, oxygen to ventilate an idea of trying to succeed. We can tolerate different political opinions about how we should govern this country. Join any political party, form a political party of your own, take part in the governance structure. But for the four corners and boundaries of this country, we are fixed. Ghana is Ghana. We are not prepared to give 1 inch of our soil out. That is done. There are people who, for political and legal reasons, say that, well, there's a right to self-determination. We don't buy that. All the major political parties in Ghana are united. And if it were happening in America, you see Republicans and Democrats united. And that is one of the things that we need as a country to develop. That on certain things, you understand, we speak as a nation, especially when we face a common enemy. This group is a common enemy to both the NDC and the MPP. None of us will benefit politically if any part of Ghana is carved out. Immediately that happens, and any of the political parties gives even the slightest form of direct or indirect support to such an activity. Tomorrow, if the positions change and you are in government and the other side is in opposition, they will equally undermine you. And there's nothing more frightening than, as a government, being confronted with a political and a military secession. Your activities will grind to a halt. Every focus and attention will be on trying to deal with that problem, and you won't have the opportunity to develop as a nation. Look at what has happened to. Imagine that every morning you wake up and the first things you see is that the road, there's a roadblock, or that the whole Volta region is a security zone, and that you cannot have goods and services coming in from that side. It means we are losing our taxes that come from that side of the country into the main part of here and into the Burkina Faso and other places coming, because that's a West ECOWAS international route, for example. So there are so many things that make it a disincentive to even be seen as a political party giving any form of support to this particular group. President Mohammed's criticism has to do with the manner in which we have seen to be handling some aspects of it. And it's important that we as the opposition keep the government on its toes, that there has been some intelligence failure. For example, I expected that at the minimum, the Volta regional minister should have gone.
You want him to be sacked?
Yes.
Why?
Because he failed. It is on his watch that this activity happened. It is a major security failure. I mean, I'm not going to criticize the president per se for it, because the president obviously cannot be at the Volta region. He depends on information. Let's be real. He is in Accra or wherever he is. He will rely on security daily reports. My colleague here is NIE boss in Accra. He has regional offices all over. There are certain things that if happen in Wale, for example, unless his regional director or whatever gives him information, there has been security lapses. And for the minimum, the commanding officers responsible in the Volta region, for example, defense intelligence, anyone connected with the security architecture in the Volta region has questions to answer, because at the minimum, intelligence should have picked up the fact that something like this was going to happen. Imagine, for example, that we had been slow in reacting to this thing for even a day. It could have degenerated into something else. They could have actually got more support and actually become more of a problem, which would have meant that we needed to move more resources, energy, time, and effort to deal with that. It leaves other parts of our country vulnerable. If this was an internationally coordinated attack, for example, what would have happened was that we would have been moving assets from, let's say, the north and other places to come and deal with this problem and leave our other borders vulnerable. Already we don't have enough men to be able to even patrol our borders, for example. So there was a security lapse. So the call, however harsh it might be for my brother on the other side, for example, you understand, is that whoever is in charge, apart from the president, obviously he's the commander-in-chief, so he bears ultimate responsibility. But legally, how we've handled them before, and literally how we've handled them previously, we need to up our game. We are learning lessons. On hindsight, we are realizing these people are not playing. If they just within a space of 6 or 7 hours were able to cause these kinds of problems, then if we are handling them with kids' gloves, we need to tighten the way. But of course, we appeal to our security agencies to not to abuse the powers. You understand? We need to have a balance. You are dealing with a situation, but please make sure that genuine citizens going about their normal business are reassured that security is in place. So the fact that we put in the security measures there should not also adversely affect. Of course, there will be discomfort because if curfews, for example, are imposed, you have to comply because they'll need that space and time. For example, if they put in a curfew from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., it is because they want to monitor the activities of persons who are moving in and out. So if you don't have any business being at certain places, you shouldn't be there. So there will be the circumscription of some freedoms, and which persons in that region must also understand. But we need our security. That is all I'll say to that.
Emeka, do you agree with people like me who say that the security heads in that part of the country failed in this regard?
You see, the problem with security agents and their operation is that they are judged not by the things they've done well, but by the things they have not done well. So it's also possible, and we don't have that hindsight. It's also possible that more attack would have been done in the past, and they were able to dictate and also deal with it. So we don't know that. If you sack heads of security agents, are you saying that you have put in enough facilities in place to help the person coming, or do you want the current people to learn from the mistakes and move forward? So it's neither here nor there. But the other thing that I wanted also to sound as an advice or even warning is that I'm already beginning to hear, I'm not conversant with the ethnic groups, but I'm already beginning to hear the adverse. I think the issue of generalization should stop. You know, identity-based crisis is difficult to resolve. If they keep referring to the entire region as those who want to secede rather than isolate it, it might be counterproductive.
You're talking about discussions around the subjects outside since it happened and not what we've said so far, right?
Not on the studio.
Okay.
If you listen to the colleagues in the studio, they have specific about very few people.
Yeah.
But outside of the studio, the things that I'm hearing is generalizing a particular ethnic group, and that for me would be counterproductive. And especially that those who are the traditional authorities have spoken against the issue. So people should also be circumspect in terms of the choices of their words. But for the security agents, when things like this happen, what I know that normally happen is that they sit down and say, where did we get it wrong? So if it is that the commander, for example, got good information and refused to act, then you can have a case to ask him to leave. But if it is that they did not even receive the information, then they begin to rejig the architecture and begin to look at where they have gotten it wrong. So it might also be counterproductive if you ask anybody to leave on this account. That's my opinion.
Okay, let's come back to the studio. We have been joined by Adam Bona. He's also a security analyst. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you.
We're speaking about the issue at length. Let me ask you what you make of how government has managed this whole scenario so far.
Well, yes, good morning to my co-panelists and good morning to viewers and listeners. How government has managed it, I would say maybe we are beginning to pick up the pieces and try to do some cleaning up. If not, it has been very abysmal, very discouraging.
Why do you say that?
I would say that because some of us were expecting that at least we have what I call institutional memory of these people. They just didn't spring up from nowhere. They started from somewhere. So the idea is that the technocrats, the politicians would come and go, but you would have a certain chief director or, you know, the couples who still work around this organization. So one would have expected that if we were following them over the years, proper advice should have been given to the policymakers, given to the leadership of this country. But unfortunately, that was not done. Somewhere along the line, I think AG was negligent. When these guys were arrested and flown into Accra, there was a lot of show, just like we've seen recently. What did we see? The AG decided to go to court and said, we want to discontinue the case. So these guys were, you know, discharged and acquitted, and they were given transportation to go back home. It didn't take too long. They decided to call our bluff and, you know, declare the area in their own minds belongs to them, independent. What did we do? I don't know if I stand to be corrected, but as far as I'm concerned, I haven't seen the police, you know, go into courts to ask court to give them a warrant where they sent to Interpol in France to issue a red alert on Papavi's head. All we keep hearing is that Papavi is not within the jurisdiction. If it's not here, I'm sure that we were able to locate Nam1. We were able to locate other fugitives who have been on the run, including some, you know, kidnappers who the police looked for them in Nigeria. If you know how Nigeria is, looked for them and brought them back into this country. So it isn't, it's not as if we don't have the capacity. We have the capacity. So my expectations were that at least when these people were brought here, they had done, there was enough or ample evidence to suggest that they were actually trying to break up this country. And the law is specific, and the punishment very specific, that what they are doing could amount to treason. And if you are, you know, convicted with treasonable charges, I mean, the punishment is death through hanging. They didn't even get remand. They were free to go. And subsequently, the intelligence community went to sleep. I was expecting that you keep following them, if for nothing at all. I do know that the National Security Secretariat or the National Security Ministry has what is called the interceptors, where they are able to intercept me if they want to listen to me. They can intercept, they will be able to listen and record and follow me wherever they want to go to. We have the instrument now in this country. What did they do with that instrument? And out of that instrument, some people are in jail. I'm sure you know. Dabuga Pele, I mean, there's not is it the NCA prosecution? I mean, it is out of that. That system is one of the reasons why some people went to jail. So I was expecting that, if for nothing at all, we should have been able to follow these people. We didn't do it. And what did we do? They were able to have what I call a coordinated attack with military precision. This was coordinated to the extent that they rendered our security agencies around the 2 a.m. area, incapacitated them. They did what they had to do before we started countering. And I asked myself, and so if this was an invading force that was going to invade us, they would have run over us before we realized what they've done to us. And so, and we were told that we had intelligence. You don't know, no state does that. You don't say you had intelligence and you allow them to, so we minimize the effect of it. No, this was an afterthought, you know, where these things, they put things together. Our mind is that for us to have waited within a very short time for these guys to come back again and ban, I mean, call our bluff, ban the STC, you know, ban vehicles and beat up drivers within the STC yard, meant that these guys meant what they were doing.
Was that a form of response, in your opinion, to the people who were arrested?
No, it wasn't. It was like, we can hit you if we want.
Okay.
This is like, you know, it's not a form of a response. No, I'm sure, you know, for those who have been arrested, I mean, the prosecution would have to prove beyond every reasonable doubt. I'm sure there are lawyers here. I mean, proving criminal cases in court is the most difficult. You have to prove beyond every reasonable. If you don't have any evidence, they will dismiss and they will go home, and the evidence is there. And so they were literally just telling us that we can hit you as at when we want. And that is what they did. So I was expecting that at least for the national security and what they've been put in charge of, they would have been immediately when these things happen, they will swarm the place and ensure that, you know, they begin to, you know, investigate those who were part of this. But it looks like the thing was to issue statements to calm nerves, and then they hit us. And to the extent that we waited for some traditional leaders to say, oh, we've called National Security Minister, we've called this and that to come, and they didn't come. Then we had security ministers running to the region to go and meet the traditional leaders. I don't think this is, I guess, well for us as a state. And so as far as I'm concerned, the president, probably we would have to blame the president because he's the one who is in charge of the National Security Council.
Why should the president be?
You see, in terms of the president, he's the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. By extension, the president is the one who commissions officer cadets. If you, let's say me, I go to the police academy, you know, to be an officer, the president will have to give me my instruments of office. He does that. So these people receive their, you know, instrument of office from this. So he's the commander. If Ghana decided to, let's say, there's an unfortunate where we have to invade Togo and take Togo, invade them. The president who must sign that warrant. Is the reason why we say he's the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces.
But you would agree that the president has other responsibilities.
No.
He has people working in different areas.
One of the first responsibilities given to the president is security. Without security, I mean, we will not be here. I drove here, we went through traffic and came here, nobody attacked me. I'm sure you know. We are here, we are talking, you know, make you responsibly, everything. If I break the law, I should be arrested. And so one of the key responsibilities given to the president by the people of this country, you know, by extension, the Constitution, is security. And so mine is that when things go right, in the scheme of things, who do we praise? You praise the president, isn't it? When things don't go right, you begin to call the president and say, Your Excellency, things are, you know, the president, he appointed everybody, or you don't know, those under him.
Well, he does that, John, coming here.
Let me just finish. From there, you go to the AG. The AG, I think that by now the AG should have been responding to why these people were freed. The AG hasn't told us anything, so we don't know where Papa V is. I know you know the AG is in charge of our, you know, he represents Ghana in terms of legal issues. Should tell us what happened. When you move from there, you go to the National Security Minister. For me, I think that he should have been fired. He should have been fired because he is superintending over this chaos. Then the fourth person is the Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament. I am represented. I am represented by a member of parliament. Here I sit. There is a member of parliament who has been elected by the people here. So wherever I find, if I decided to come and stay here now, and there are issues here that has to do with things are not going well, I would have to find out who is a member of parliament here. As we speak, I was expecting a certain, is it a emergency parliament to, some parliament to be recalled for these ministers to be asked questions. Security ministers, do we know, have they given us any briefing?
You are saying that the Speaker of Parliament
should recall, who would have to recall Parliament?
For the sector ministers to answer questions on what is happening. But the National Security Minister went to the Volta region yesterday. They briefed the nation on their findings. What has the Speaker of Parliament got to do with this?
The Speaker of Parliament, because in that area, we have parliamentarians. And around that time, 2-3 hours, the people said that place belonged to them. Technically, for 2-3 hours, that place had been ceded to these people because no vehicles were coming and no vehicles were moving out. And so mine is like, technically, if you are this Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament, what it meant was that the whole of that session, I mean, how many constituencies do we have? I think there are about 216 thereabout. It means
75.
That
all the constituencies in Ghana,
yes,
275.
275. It means that technically those people had taken part of it for 2-3 hours. We need to know. I mean, respectfully, we want to know. And how do we get to know? Do we get to know from just the security chiefs, or we would want Ghanaians? I mean, I am interested in knowing what actually is going on, what measures are being put in place. All we hear is, the communication, the communication, Honorable Communication Minister, who is speaking for the ministers of security.
But the information minister is the government spokesperson.
So when they are having, what do you call it, the COVID thing, he speaks for the health people.
He introduces
the president. So what I'm saying is that...
Is there something wrong with the information minister speaking about this?
See, security is very, very technical, just like health.
Let's hear from John on this.
I'm a little bit disappointed with, what's the name, Bona? Seriously, this discussion so far has been on how best we can deal with the security problem without blame game. And if you are introduced on a program as a security expert and all your analysis is finding people to blame, from president to ministers to this, then you are not addressing the problem. I disagree with him on several points. First of all, we are not looking for Papa V. I'm not sure there's any warrant looking for Papa V. Yes, he was taken through a process. He was granted bail, and then I think a nolle prosequi was filed. If you are looking for Papa V, somebody just brought a text message that he's on radio stations in Volta region. I'm not sure government has announced that we are looking for Papa V. So for that to be your response and basis, please, when you were speaking, I was here. Note it. When you were speaking, I was here. You see, we cannot begin to twist the situation in the country to make it look like there is a rebel leader somewhere that we are looking for. We are not looking for Papa V. And also take note, the first group that Papa V led and their symbol of flag or whatever they came with is totally different from this group of people who have come with another flag. So let's not make it look like there is one organization. These are different groups of individuals in batches trying to create a difficult situation for the country. So that's the first point to know. Secondly, people are not in prison because they brought a system into Ghana, as he put out. And I'm happy Nye is here. That was not their charge. It is a case of embezzlement and causing financial loss today. It's not because they brought a particular system into Ghana, the way he's putting it. That is not the reason why they are in Ghana. They are in prison. So that's about it. Thirdly, why do you blame the president? It's like we are in CITI FM here. There's just a police station at Tadabraka behind us. And now all of a sudden, armed robbers plan to attack CITI FM and also attack maybe the Tadabraka police station. Because of that, we blame the president. Really? So because we have a police station, armed robbery has ceased in the country, or stealing or rape or crime can't go on. It is the reason why we have the security services in place. And if you look at the immediate response, and look, no matter how many police force we have in our country, 25,000 or 50,000 police force cannot be in every part of the country at the same time. So we must all talk about our reaction and the way forward. Not to single out people to blame them. Because nobody, not even in advanced country like the US or even Russia, can lay claim to no crime in our country. It's not possible. You will have the security system in place. People will still plan and commit crimes. And what has happened is a pure criminality. And the security agencies are on top of it. They are arresting people, they are going through processes. And we are all saying that, look, the first incident that happened, because of the nature of the group and the fact that government thought they could use a more reconciliatory approach to deal with it. If, with benefit of hindsight, we are all saying let's be harsh, we can't just go blaming people and blaming president and blaming people for crime. Crimes will always be committed, but we must have a system that deal with it. And we cannot solve those criminal activities by blaming people. If we're a security expert, you tell us how to handle it, what has led to it, and how we can handle it. You don't come here saying you blame parliament, you blame this, you blame that. That we are not here for blame game. We are here to decide how to handle these people better. And I started by commending President Mahama for the caution to the country that if every group now decide to take part of Ghana, there will be no Ghana left. For me,
I sympathize with my brother on the fact I sympathize with him to the extent that you see it's a difficult position to be in. Because
but before you come in, let me finish with the information minister. Every government has their strategy on communication, and who leads the communication? If the minister for information, who speaks, is the spokesman for the government, comes out to talk about the security situation and steps that have been taken. What is wrong with that? You want to see the army commander, or that's, you see, we have different strategies. The fact that somebody didn't adopt your strategy doesn't mean he's not communicating properly. We as government believe that the information ministry, as at this point, because it depends on the scale you put on it. If you compare COVID, yes, it depends on this. And the president has indicated that he is not ready to panic on this matter, which means that, no, don't force it. No, it's not, and anybody who knows this group will tell you, you don't have to over panic. We don't need to panic. I think that... You really? Oh, of course. Of course. I can tell you the security of this nation is not that much threatened by these people. And I can assure you government is going to take firm action to ensure that our nation is protected. I want to go the path of the president, who believes in much consultation, broad consultation with all kinds of sectors and stakeholders in our country. And I'm even happy that ahead of any harsh actions from government, the traditional authorities are taking the lead to invite government to partner with them to resolve this problem. That's the way to go. It's not about guns. Government has guns. We should. It's not about shooting guns.
You have your turn.
Is it Kuma is in a difficult position. You see, you don't want, and it's when you are president, even when you cough, it sends a signal. Just look at the U.S., for example. Trump falls sick. He still has to be out there to reassure the nation, because the health of the president of America even goes to their stocks and everything. So I can understand the president if he says we have a rebel situation in this country coming from the president. It has serious economic, political, international, because it comes from him. You will see travel advisories change. You will see. So it is not for nothing that you would see the president not being in a haste to elevate the situation beyond, because it has serious, ramifications when it comes to the kind of communication you put out. Even for COVID, the kind of numbers we put out actually have an effect as to even the advisories that are given out as to whether persons are okay to come in the country, as to whether we are handling. So, to some extent, government communication has to be managed. However, it doesn't prevent us as citizens from taking on the persons who we believe should have reacted and reacted promptly. Bona's suggestion about the fact that Parliament should be convened, that must come from the parliamentarians. And I believe that the Speaker has the authority, but Honorable Samoa Cudjoe has spoken. He's gone on a tour of the area because his constituency is the largest in terms of this particular issue. Again, communication from the government is measured because they know that it goes with a lot of.
But it doesn't mean the Speaker must take blame.
But no, to some extent, you see, the thing is, with the situation that occurred was a serious situation. What has government's reaction been in response to it that reassures us as a country that they are taking this matter very, very seriously? There was a gap, and that must be admitted. The National Security Minister said he was busy and had to do other things before he went into after the Volta Regional House of Chiefs, and the divisional chief in the area became angry that, look, we were trying to reach you, we couldn't reach you. We have information telling you that the people who started this thing were not from that area. It is when they reacted that so there was a gap. And I think that Kuma, as much as government will not want to raise this issue and raise temperatures and tensions, the responsible ministers and things must also accept some blame that there was a gap. And that gap must not be tolerated, because it is that gap that will give room for more issues to arise. The president, I think, for now, I would be a bit more reticent in criticizing his approach in terms of communication. Maybe we're expecting a national identity. You see, anything he says immediately. So from the governor's point of view, I can understand his caution. But perhaps if certain ministers at the minimum were reassigned or certain things happened, we would be reassured. You know, maybe visuals. We need to see, perhaps in terms of the communication, we could have had the Minister of Information move into the area himself. With the deputy was there, he held a press conference. He wasn't carried. You see, so the level of communication from the area, we need to see normalcy. You see, one of the things that would reassure us is that the place is normal. The security are in control. They are at every nook and cranny. We can see areas that had problems reopened. The police station that had a problem repainted. You see, there must be a normalcy for the citizens to understand that government is in full control of activities. At least the persons who are arrested have been taken to court. That is there. There's action on that front. They must be prosecuted. It's not about getting 31 of them and allowing them. No, they must be prosecuted. The places where we are, we were sharing this over here. I felt maybe this even wasn't the correct form. Persons where we have seen people training, people putting pictures, those things must be picked up. We must see there must be daily briefings from the security agencies telling us that they are not taking this issue lightly. That is my problem, that there seems to be a certain laxity in the posture from the security agencies who are responsible for the day-to-day security of the area. If they don't up their game, then we will criticize them. Okay. And ultimately, then we begin to criticize the president.
We have to take a break. When we return, you have your the opportunity to respond to the issues John Kuma raised. This is the big issue on CITI FM and CITI TV. We'll be back with more. Don't go away.
Play the golden goal on Bet Planet today with just 20 Ghana cedis. You could win a Mercedes and 100,000 Ghana cedi worth of prizes. This advert has been vetted and approved by the Gaming Commission of Ghana. Bet responsibly, not for persons below the age of 8.
We have new addictive series for you on DSTV.
A country invaded, another surrendered. What will America do?
So much has changed.
No, you've changed.
Go, go, go! Love a good British drama. World on Fire's intimate portrayal of the effects of wartime on ordinary people may be your next favorite thing to watch. Or catch Stargirl, a stellar series around a teenage superhero who is a shining beacon in the darkest of times. True crime fans, you'll be fascinated by this brilliant federal agent as she dives into the dark criminal underworld. And join some of Power's most controversial characters in this spin-off. Series definitely worth checking out on DSTV.
You're welcome back to the big issue on CITI FM and CITI TV. There's so much heat in the studio. You have no idea what transpired during the break. But Mr. Boda, let's hear from you.
So just a quick reaction to some of the things he said. You know, I raised that, and he kept saying that we are not here to do that. I am here to do that. Maybe you are not here, but I have a duty to put out what I know. It depends on how you see it, but I will not be responsible for how you see what I say, so long as I'm responsible. And so mine is that, first of all, he raised the issue of Papavi, and no red alert being issued on Papavi. If you are a country governed by rules and regulations, and someone there says, I've declared independence, and you tell me that as someone who knows what I know, I should treat it as flat. There's no security connotations. After that declaration, we saw pictures on social media of people being trained in some forests, people being trained in the bushes. We were told that, oh, these are Photoshop. It moved on. Subsequently, we started picking information about what these guys are intending to do. Fast forward, these guys went on rampage, blocking streets of this country. If we sat down for these things to happen, the president in a radio communication or a radio interview recently did say that they are terrorists. I don't know whether you have you read that portion?
I listened to the president.
He referred to them as terrorists. The moment when the president speaks, it's policy. When the president speaks, it's policy. I know we have the anti-terrorism law. And so it is not broad enough. So as I sit here, if I, Adam Bona, decided, I've said it somewhere before coming here, decided to go support Papa V and his people, would you have any law that is punitive? Would you have any law against me? Is there any law forbidding me from giving them money?
Of course. I just read a law even here.
Tell me, what I want to know is that, is there anything against Papa V as we speak?
Of course.
There is a law.
If you take clearly, if you engage in activities which are meant to subvert the territorial integrity.
What I'm trying to say is that
there's a specific law on this Togoland terrorism.
So what I am trying to say is that have we blacklisted Papa V and say all people dealing with Papa V today, for instance,
you're calling for federal legislation to deal with.
But there's already existing legislation.
So basically what I'm saying is that just like it is done elsewhere, where you say maybe this individual, this group, that person, if you...
So for example, in other jurisdictions, there's a general law that allows them, for example, the Minister of Interior, the Minister of National Security, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, for example, to blacklist certain organizations that is deemed to be inimical in the interest of national security.
There is such an existing law, Prohibited Organizations Act 1976, SMCD 20. It's already here. It's not been repealed. So if you support them, if you join their campaign, if you fund them, you are by law.
But you sat here telling me Papa V is not on the wanted list.
No, what I'm saying is we're taking to court and clear. You made it look like we are looking for him, we can't find him.
What I am saying
Which
is
government announcement said we're looking for Papa V and we can't find him? Don't sit here and paint government as if government is incompetent. We are not looking for Papa V. If we want him, we'll find him.
Well,
he's already, of course.
That is your...
Don't make it look like he's hiding somewhere.
If you want him, we'll find him. I didn't say government was incompetent. That's your choice of words.
No, but that's what you are trying to do here. That's what you are trying to do here.
I didn't say that. That is your substitution.
When we wanted to find him, we found him. We took him to court. It was government that entered on the court.
But what I am saying is that...
because you are not speaking to the situation.
I'm speaking to the issue.
There is an existing law. What you are asking us to do already exists. What government did initially was to be tolerant, which I agree, and people have criticized that. I have conceded to that. And I'm saying going forward...
Did Papa V declare independence?
Not as far as I know. They are making agitations. They can't even declare independence. What are they talking about?
My point is
not as far as I know. They are making agitations. They cannot declare independence.
So
what kind of independence?
For example, moving forward, we could have legislation that proactively deals with groups such as Papa V's group politically that seek to undermine the territorial integrity of the country. Whilst at the same time dealing militarily with those kinds of and so the call is on government to do more. You understand? I think that my brother's discomfort
in this matter.
So for you want additional legislation?
Yes.
As Ni has said.
Yes. Mine is that let's broaden it.
Okay.
We have an existing law. These guys, if we underestimated them, they have shown us that they are serious. They have kidnapped police officers. They have gone, called our bluff, bent, vehicles that belong to, a state, organization, and we are now reacting. We have always been reactive. And so mine is that can we begin to have a conversation where we begin to broaden the scope, the scheme of things to ensure that, it becomes more punitive. At the end of the day, I think we are talking, maybe all of us on this table are talking about the same thing. None of us, no, wait. None of us is talking about, you see, none of us is talking about what these guys are doing is right. None of us is talking about it. There is a certain, is it Kusi Kedem or something? Kusi Kedem. Thank you. I think it's a former NDC.
John, hold on, please.
He's a former NDC member of parliament. I think so, I'm told.
Yes, chairman for education committee previously.
If you hear him talk, it sends chills through your spine. Because all that he's purporting to do is to actually say that even in the parliament where he served, called the Ghana's parliament, Ghana didn't exist. And he's saying that, you know, these guys kind of should be allowed, literally, I think I heard him on your network, should be allowed to do what they are doing. I think that, I mean, respectfully, these are the people who the national security should be asking questions of. Who have they been talking to? Who, you know, have they been dealing with? What did they know? Are they supporting these people financially? I mean, we need to know a lot, and it's not alone. And
Please.
so mine is...
Okay, just a minute. You see, some of these suggestions, we must be mindful of our history. We have gone through a process and the Preventive Detention Act before, where we can just presume that when we look at you, we suspect you, we arrest you and go and detain you.
I didn't, please, don't misquote me.
When you were speaking, I was here.
Wait.
The interpretation of what you are saying, when you spoke, I listened to you.
You are interjecting me.
So you let me speak to what you said.
Wait. I'm trying to. Let me
when
clarify.
You say we should be proactive in arresting people, that's what you are saying.
Let me clarify.
And ask him, he's a lawyer, ask him.
I didn't say
we had that history as part of our country. So how will you be proactive going around and arresting people? What do you do?
I don't think you might be older than me, but all that I'm saying is that the Preventive Detention Act, we all know what you were seeking to do. What I am asking for is that this, I didn't say they should detain him, so don't misquote me. What I am seeking for is that, does he know something? In any case, what's his name? Retired Major Boachijan. He said something and he was invited by the CITI for interrogations. And so what I am saying is that those who seem to be saying things that probably they know something that we are not aware of, can we call them, not detain them? Ask them, do we know?
But you do not know if government is speaking to these
already speaking
people.
to them. And
you don't know that.
Because Secession has been engaged from day one on these matters.
These are persons who are still going around.
Why should you arrest them and detain them or what? This is a democratic environment. Look, I just want to assure him that as a country, we have enough systems to deal with these matters. And I'm happy when President referred to them as terrorists. Because if you can just go and burn state assets, attack police stations, when you have a means of redress, then obviously you are becoming a terrorist. And that's how we must deal with them. We have enough laws in our country to deal with these illegal organizations. And already, government and the security agencies are dealing proactively with these matters. Previously, maybe we have become lenient. And I've considered Tunis' comment that maybe we shouldn't have been lenient or with benefit of hindsight. But going forward, I can assure everybody in the country that there's no cause for alarm.
Okay.
We are not under any aggression or siege. So let's not over-elevate the conversation to put more premium on the capacity of these people.
Okay.
But that is also not to say that they don't pose a threat. But it's a manageable threat that we can deal with.
That's the point. My last comments on this. I think Kuma is doing his possible best to do the government thing of reassuring us that we are not under imminent threat because, of course, it doesn't do well when you join the list of countries which are unstable. That's even the tag of having internal instability, let alone external, possibly internal and externally influenced instability affects your ratings economically. Affects. So he's doing his possible best. What we require of government is assurance and reassurance. I think that the posture that these people are insignificant threat per se may not be the most appropriate. Okay. Government is taking the necessary steps, not only in theory, not only in speech, but on the ground. Reassure us that the activities that need to be taken into account are needed, and that there's some restructuring, some shifting around, some movement around that reassure us that these things are being taken seriously. Because honestly, if we play with them, they started with only a 2-hour demonstration of what they could possibly do. The next thing we saw was the burning down of, and one other thing, they actually sought to take over the accuses. Dam.
Those are not 20
those are not things that those are not things that should be toyed with, because we don't know what they could strike at again. So there is the need for us to be double assured that our security is intact. I can understand the communication part.
I agree with you.
All right, let's go.
We are giving that double assurance to be done. And I'm happy you spoke about Akosombo Dam.
Okay.
Because the regional minister and the security intelligence came out to say that they prevented the worst.
Yes.
So let's also not be quick to blame them for non-action. So yes, we are taking actions. I can tell you, going forward, you are going to see different responses to this kind of provocation. But we must still remember we are in a democratic country, in a democratic environment, so we should not expect a certain excessive actions immediately, so that we run together as a country. Let's not lose our values, because I've seen it before, where the Preventive Detention Act led innocent people to be in jail for nothing.
All right,
people can capitalize on some of these provocations.
Thank you for that. Franklin?
Yes, from where I sit, I tend to hear a lot. So on Friday, May 22nd, the Defense Intelligence Department of the Ghana Army, the chief had invited Imani, CDD, and IDEC to come and speak to the issues around security and then economic outlook after the pandemic. Well, CDD and IDEC spoke on the status of public safety in the overall architecture, security architecture of the country. I think IDEC spoke about the expectations of security ahead of the elections 2020 and how to manage them. We, of course, spoke on the economic outlook after the pandemic. Now, there were very interesting people at that meeting, including the BNI director. The conversation was very interesting. This was a closed meeting, and of course, it was publicly acknowledged. I must admit, and I must assure you, that the Defense Intelligence Unit, together with the allied agencies, were given, in fact, they made their own presentation first, and then we also made our presentations, and we were quite aligned on exactly what the security hotspots were. And these matters were, incidentally, there were referrals to these matters. I think if you speak to the CDD rep there at the time who spoke on this issue, well, I'll speak to Cudjoe Asante and HK Prempe, by the way, but the gentleman who spoke on behalf of CDD was, I've just forgotten his name. Anyway, the point I'm making is that there was an elaborate conversation about these matters. So where am I driving to with this story, with this history, is to tell you that the security forces know exactly what should be done. I asked the BNI directly, have you picked up these issues? Do you know about them? He said, oh yeah, they picked them up. I said, well, that's good to know. What it means, therefore, is that they must then inform the political establishment to be wary of these matters as well. I am cocksure that they did do that. I cannot tell whether anybody else was sleepy on the job or not, but I can assure you that one of the problems we've had in this country is policy alignment and policy coherence. So at the very middle level, and even at this highest level, these conversations were had. I'm wondering how much of that permeated through policy. And so let's not, I'm not trying to get us into fighting in a boxing ring or whatever. It may well be that most of the things we are talking about are actually known, but maybe there was some lethargy in the way we had reacted so far. But again, it's an election year, and so yes, we need to be very careful. But I must assure you that I am very much convinced that when we have that conversation. There's just about 20 people with the forces of this country. There was a lot that was shared, and I can only share this aspect that they are on top of the issue, and they may have definitely gave us the full assurance that they were going to send these concerns to the highest office, and I'm sure they did. They cannot be responsible for what may have happened otherwise. Thank you.
Emeka, your final comments on this matter.
I think the first thing to acknowledge is that we are extremely very lucky to have two very civil politicians in the studio. It's not every time that you get that quality of discussion, because it's also important that CITI begin to look in that direction. Let's not invite people to the studio to speak on this issue as though it is politicized, because that's the way the outsider will see it. So that's very key. The second thing is that it might be presumptuous to think that the security is not doing anything. So what happens in other crimes that I'm aware of is that once there is a breach in security, the security chiefs will sit down, review what has happened, learn lessons from that, and now retool their approach. So let's not make that assumption, and let's not put too much pressure on the security in such a way that they begin to align with our own panic. That's also very, very important. Otherwise, they can go overboard in an attempt to satisfy us, and that also creates another problem. The final thing also to look at is that I don't know anywhere in the world that only hardcore military force approach have dealt with the issue of extremism or terrorism. So let's bear that in mind.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. That's Chukwu Emeka. He's a security analyst. He's the executive director of the West Africa Network for Peace Building. He joined us via Zoom for this discussion. Mr. Abena, so finally on this issue.
No, finally, I think what I would say is that let's quickly look at our strategy towards dealing with these people. I have heard somewhere where we say we shouldn't dialogue at all with these people. Yes, I wouldn't call for dialogue, but I think that there has to be some conversation, going on behind the scene, whilst trying to tackle the criminal aspect of this case. Because moving forward, if we take just one approach into dealing with it, where we want to go after them. Who are they anyway? We might know some of them, but most of them, if you take the case of Osama bin Laden and his people, you get just one person, the rest of them would vanish. And so let's use different approaches. But the most important thing is that let's, our presence on the ground, let's have uniformed officers. I'm sure, speaking to some of the security chiefs, they are assured, myself and my colleagues, that yes, they are going to flood the place with uniform officers. But most importantly, those not in uniform matter a lot, because they pick the information and share same information with those in uniform. And so I would end this session by saying that, can we, begin to look at this approach? If we didn't take them serious, let's begin to take them so serious, because if you take the case, most secessionist groups in the world, this is how they started. Because they know you never take them serious. Before you realize, they begin to hit you hard.
A couple of the messages that have been sent in before we move to our other subject for discussion. Kambe from Spintex says, is the national security hiding something from Ghanaians? Could it be that some of the people were being trained by political parties and have a raw deal with the government and are rebelling by creating this insecurity in the guise of Western Togoland? At least the real culprits have not been arrested yet. Well, we do not know. Some persons have been arrested. They are suspects until the law courts proves them as guilty. Albert Dankwa from the Savannah region, he says, what is John Kuma saying? That the president is not to blame? Then who is to blame? The issue didn't just happen overnight. I remember during the independence celebrations in March, the group hoisted their flag claiming independence. John Kuma should know that we are not, we are talking about addressing the issues and not politics. Okay. Ni Mosi says the discussion has been brilliant about keeping the territorial integrity of our country. We suspect external adversaries and we must deal with that. However, I think we are ignoring the effects of the rise of distressful tribalism in Ghana, which is equally a threat to national stability. Okay, thank you. Osibo from Kumasi says, my sister, let's all condemn this act from the group. I think government should use his power to deal with these people. Okay, you add that John Kuma is the people's choice. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think that's so I can take his position.
Before we move on this matter, I think that as a nation we should utilize all our resources. One thing I've noticed is that if anything happens in the Ashanti region, Otumfo usually have a big financing and usually build consensus. In the Volta region, we are lucky as a nation to have the former president, Jerry John Rawlings, who is also highly respected and regarded in the region. And I think that we must find a way to bring him to the center in the management of this matter. You know, the UN picked him to help solve problems in Somalia and where there were conflicts on the African continent. He did his best. So we can't have him here and then internally we are having some of these issues. So we should use all the resources that we have in the country.
Okay, we are talking about electoral matters now, and the NDC sued the Electoral Commission over their decision to reopen the voter register system. It did happen anyway. Let me start with Ni on this. What was the NDC seeking to achieve, and it didn't quite end well for you?
Oh, there's nothing that has gone on that hasn't ended well for the NDC per se. What did we seek to do in the court and the reliefs that we're seeking? The issues before the court in respect of the elections are quite clear. That at the end of the day, there's a law that guides how elections, in terms of the polling, the opening of registration of persons to vote should proceed, and you must be guided by it. The party noticed that the Electoral Commission, we finished with the registration process. We are actually exhibiting
the provisional
register as it is. Then we understand the EC says it wants to open a one-day registration to deal with or give the opportunity for certain persons, category of persons who did not have the opportunity to register. It is guided by law. There must be a certain number of days in respect of the gazetting of the notice for the opening for registration. So obviously, if you are dissatisfied as a party with that particular action by the EC, you go to court. So the necessary processes were filed. What the party, because it was a few days between the period of announcement of the intention and the date of execution, lawyers have options. If the time period is very short, what probably you do is that you file the necessary papers, but the law allows you to go without notice to the other party first, seeking for emergency orders to restrain whatever would go on, and then you come back on notice to have the matter heard with the other party so that arguments could be heard from both sides. The emergency orders that the party sought to restrain the EC from carrying out the registration was denied. The court said come back on notice. So the writ itself and what the party is seeking to have not done or restrained from happening would be heard later on. But Kuma and I would agree that look, you went to court to stop the act. So once the act had been, so it's a matter of what we say strategy. However, the intent is there, and the reliefs that are being sought technically, the number of people that are registered or registered on that day is a record that will be kept. It is something that can be verified. The court can make orders that because of the violation, possible violation of the existing law in respect of the required notice that should have been given, by virtue of the fact that you violated that, EC should delete the names of all those that were captured on that day. That is an order that could be given, and the EC will be bound by it. So I'm always happy when matters are taken to court, because that is the forum for the adjudication of these things. I dislike, or nobody likes, a tension-filled election period where matters are taken into the hands of the individual political players. But it brings to the fore what I and the NDC largely have been advocating for. We need an election-centered law. We should have a law that solely deals with every aspect of our elections, from the registration to the issue of voting day activities. Everything that has to do with our election, we should embody in one law and take away the discretions. Because you see, it is the discretionary nature of some of the activities of the EC that bring about the tension that we always see in elections. Sometimes it's not as the political players per se, because today we are in opposition. Tomorrow it will be on the other side. The reason why sometimes we mass up and we are on demonstrations and there's suspicion and on all that is because we have a lot of things that are virtually ad hoc. We go for a CI to resolve every other year. We go to the parliament to pass a CI to govern a particular election, and in doing so, things are added, things are subtracted. We had a whole debate that put this country on the edge over what documentation should be used as a form of identification. Let's have a conversation between the parties. Let's have a law, and I'm hoping that Kuma perhaps going into parliament, hopefully one day.
But you think such a law would work?
It works, because you see,
knowing how majority minority votes.
The difference between us and other jurisdictions is that they seek to address issues that come up by legislation. If you look at the UK, for example, every time they are faced with a problem, they go to the law. They pass a law to deal with the exigencies of the time. If we have a comprehensive law that is passed by parliament, bipartisan, on the appointment of EC commissioners, for example, on the tenure of office or all that, based upon the provisions of the because, for example, the provisions of the Constitution give rise to what? Give effect to the nomination and all that. But we haven't built in even the process of nomination. We can legislate that. You see, the elections are a very crucial component of our national activity. It is a one single activity that, if not handled properly, can take this country on the edge. So when we are able to have one comprehensive legislation that deals with all these issues, the EC commissioner, for example, cannot get up and say, I'm going to create a special day for allowing this category of people to register. What about if you are going to the election the day before, and all of a sudden the EC says, for some reason, I want to open the register for some form of registration on the day before elections? Can you imagine the chaos that could occur in the country? But if we have this thing in that 60 days before election, there can be no form of registration. It is written black and white. Both parties agree to it. We put it in the law. That is it. But the discretion. My problem is the discretionary powers that the EC has, if not checked, and some of its activities, if not regulated, in terms of the overall administration of elections in this country, we could face problems. Yeah, we are going to court and all that, but sometimes you go to court, the party is not satisfied with the result. Because of the nature of the problem that we are dealing with, it could give rise to different issues. Especially, for example, one last bit is where we have a candidate, for example, who is challenged for non-compliance with the residential requirements of being eligible to be a candidate in a particular area. If we have law on all these things, which is embedded in one comprehensive law, it takes away those discretionary things. Because those things have the tendency of giving problems or creating problems for us. As we sit now, some of the things that govern our laws or govern the conduct of like the publication of the pink sheet and all that are embedded in case law. They are not even in the CI. Some of the things that happen on election day, some of the documents that we use, some of the things that we use are actually things that have emerged out of what? Case law. We are having a situation where the EC potentially is saying they want to even close the polls at 4 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock, for example. All these things are things that if we have in the law, it will solve a lot of these problems for us.
Well, I agree to some portions and don't agree to certain portions of the discussion. There is generally a law. I mean, if you look at the representation of the People's Act, the PNDC law 1992-284, we have certain laws, but we have moved on over time. So maybe he's talking about amending some of these laws. And then also his concerns about the EC opening the register to register more people when it's too close to an election. It's already provided for in the Act, in the CI, that if you register, I think 30 days or 40 days before the election day, you cannot vote. But it's your
60 days,
yes,
60 days.
It's 60 days.
60 days.
You cannot vote, but it is your right to be registered. So let's not put the two together. It may create.
But Kuma, the problem that you have is that we have case law that says that even up to election day, if you are an eligible person to be registered, you can go to court and get an order to be registered and be given the right to vote. And I was in court recently where someone who was denied by the EC, you understand, for purposes of registration, the view of the court was that he has a right not just to be registered, but he has actually a right to vote. And they used that an added case, which was saying that you cannot use a subsidiary legislation, whatever it is, to seek to take away, because the right to register is linked to the right to vote. So a mandamus was issued not only for the person to register, but the registration automatically means that the person can vote. You can see the kind of chaos that where a CI is saying that you can register, but for purposes of the vote you may not. But you can go to court and get a mandamus that will compel the EC to vote to let you vote.
But that will depend on the position of the court. And I know that with an express provision in the CI ahead of the elections, that if you register 60 days before the elections, you cannot vote. It will be very difficult for you to secure a mandamus to go and vote, because it's clear it's been part of the regulations. And the EC has the mandate to set up rules and regulations on how we vote. Of course, at certain times, depending on where you stand, you disagree with the modus operandi. We have been to court several times as an MPP, and I'm happy with the posture of our political parties up to date, especially in the Fourth Republic. And that is how we can sustain our democracy. If you disagree, you go to court. You let the court make determinations on how to make final decisions on some of these issues, which we are definitely bound to disagree. And I always thank His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, I mean, as a member of my party, for going to court in 2012. Because the lessons we taught, if we learned, even though we didn't win ultimately the court case, it taught us so much about how elections are run in this country, and how even you can be declared by the count and not declared by the written pin sheet. So many things have been learned through the court process in our country. And I am happy anytime there's a disagreement, a political party wants to go to court. It's their right to do that. Let's encourage more of that. And if we also seek to... if we want to legislate every action of the EC, it's not possible. Oh no, it's not possible. That every step, every detail... Well, some of them are not so major. I mean, I think that, of course, we have right to disagree on some of these things, but you cannot definitely legislate every actions of the EC. You are bound to give this, even the courts. Much of the decisions are based on discretions. You can't definitely say when you do A, it should be B. So some of these disagreements, but the important thing is that let's accept to disagree as part of our democracy, and when we disagree, let's go to the courts, and let's also commend the courts. They've been very responsive in terms of their decisions.
There was one thing I wanted to add, that we should also ask the judiciary and his lordship to give us specified courts
on electoral matters,
that can sit, you know, at 24/7 and also designate, for example, the Court of Appeal at the minimum to have a 3-member panel that can deal with appeals instantly.
And I think they did that in the last election. Remember?
Yes, with the
CJ setups. So it is there. And like I'm saying, we should encourage it more so that we are able to resolve our issues in courts and not by cutlasses and burning of state assets.
I know you want a bite on this, but whilst saying that, we'd like to know from you how we can handle these electoral matters in the midst of all that is happening in parts of the country so that they could not degenerate going into the polls and will not affect our security.
Okay, so probably I would want to, on this, I think that the court is there, and so I would want to, because if we have to probably go the extreme way of trying to amend everything, have per what Ni is saying. If we are not very careful, we'll get to a point where there would not, people might, the room to probably go and seek redress. If it's not there, people might resort to using other forms of doing this. And so I would say, once we are not happy, we should go to courts, because the truth is that whatever it is, the two parties never agree anyway. They agree on usually just very few things. But when it comes to election, there's the biggest car and all these things. And so mine is that if these things go to court, then people will be advocating more for themselves, and if the MPP has majority in parliament, I can bet you that MPP
You don't think we'll ever reach a common ground?
I'm being very honest with you, because as we speak,
on electoral matters,
you've seen some of these things in IPAC or whatever they call it. Even recently, recently, to the extent that I had a shock when I was told that somehow the smaller parties are being influenced by the bigger parties. And so to
at IPAC?
No, at IPAC, and you know, even who becomes Flagbearer and all that. And so mine is that, in summary, what I would want to say is, if we are not happy, in any case, 2012 we went to court. I mean, as a nation, we had to go through 9 months or 8 months of court hearings. So let's do that. I think that is helping. But I think that, as far as I'm concerned, the two parties, depending on who is in power, would agree with EC or may not agree with the EC. Just like, depending on who is in power, would not agree to the police or would agree to the police. And so, let's go to court when we are not happy. I mean, for me, this is what
for example, my brother is standing for elections as a member of parliament. The processes for challenging results, for example, should be such that the court rules, if the declaration is done today, if you have a protest, file it within 24 hours, for example. If you fail to file it within 24 hours, you lose your right to. So, you see,
those are some of the amendments.
It's already provided. You can file within 21 days.
How is this possible?
No, it's already provided.
Well, we know how the scheming goes.
It's already provided. You always seem to have suspicion. There is no scheming.
Let me make this point.
The issue about lingering election disputes. You may talk about the 21 days, but that would be after, for example, the person has been sworn in, for example. Those are we had a situation where somebody actually was in parliament for 3 years. And when the term was over, the winner, Judge Amu, was declared as winner. And that was a serious blight on our. If we are not careful, the technicalities that go with taking advantage, we are lawyers. If you don't put time limits on some of these things, these technicalities could drag. Election in other jurisdictions, presidential elections have a time period within which the judgment is even supposed to be delivered. Kenya, for example, they delivered it within a certain time frame. And so when these things don't drag, they bring about certainty. Imagine that if you are a contestant to a parliamentary election, what are your disputes? Either there was an overcount at a particular police station, there was whatever it is with the problem you have, let's say, even 48 hours. Bring your issue before court. The court has another maybe 48 hours to give a decision. It means that Kuma, after his election, within 1 week, knows he's the legitimately declared winner of the election. It's done. He's sworn in, and there's no carry on Because that 9 months we had a presidential petition cost us a lot of things in this country. You don't need those kinds of... So that's a comprehensive review of our election laws is important. It will help us to develop as a country.
Let's hear from Franklin on this before you come in, Adam.
Well, let's not pretend that the EC has superintended a very fluid process. Positively fluid process. I'm surprised we are discussing something else. The fact of the matter is that this EC has been incompetent by design, and it makes me wonder that the only reason why we are getting to this stage, irrespective of what the lawyers are saying, that there is some lacuna or there is opportunity for to vote and be registered and vote at the last day. That's not what is in contention here. What is in contention here is the EC having bungled the entire process, verification, biometric process, and has been found out and is trying to make up. And in the process of making up, is still stuck in its obstinate behavior of not engaging parties, which is the only reason why one party went to court. Look, I'm saying, and I probably am no mean authority, but nobody seems to be stalking, and we don't want to be said, we don't want to be vindicated, or we are not full out on the vengeance. But when we started this campaign, that the EC's methods were not just draconian, they were arbitrarily draconian, but had a tendency of making a simple exercise like this look very, very amateurish. And so for me, all that is happening with all this data glitch. Imagine the PR that came out recently that the machines were registering people and assigning them numbers that had already been assigned. This is a clear case of failure and a colossal financial loss.
But they were able to detect that and correct it.
Yeah, but that's the point. You see, this is the issue again about Ghana. They detected what? The last elections, there were processes where you need to do deduplication. This EC has not only done that yet, but it has not even done that with the parties as well. So they are just telling you story, like the Nigerians will say. They find out, first of all, they don't find the problem themselves. You find out the problem, you tell them, they say, oh, you are engaging in some fictitious, imaginative story. Then they try to fix it, and incompetent as they are in fixing it, they leave all kinds of trails. I only hope that the elections will go well. As I said, we wish them well. But there must be an audit of the EC in terms of its previous machines that it bought and the current machines that it bought, because you cannot claim that you are going to deliver the most flawless electronically elections when you're having these teaching amateurish problems. It only tells me one thing: they rushed, they didn't wait to do proper piloting, and I pray that on the voting day there are no glitches. That's what is in contention. I don't really care too much about the NDC's issue, but it's come out of the obstinacy of the EC. I sound like a broken record so far. There's more we are just finding out about the EC. No, there's more we are just finding about the EC, that they were procuring a lot more of machines even after procuring the biometric machines. Will be coming out shortly. Let's not joke with this thing, by the way. It's really, so for me, let's not make it look, and again, this is the only thing, but while I admit that I suspect the judiciary didn't help us at all in giving the EC this unfettered access to discretion. Discretion in the hands of an incompetent lot can only breed chaos. I pray they are successful, by the way. Thank you.
All right. Finally, on this matter, Adam, on the issue of security, so that we can talk about the floods in the Northeast region.
Well, I do believe that during the Ayawaso West Wogon sittings, the commissioners did caution the EC board, so the EC, I wouldn't say EC, to inform the citizens, let us know their security measures they are putting in place. So I would have wished that going into 2020 elections, right around now, would have had a certain blueprint of flashpoints, a certain blueprint of measures being put in place with regards to how we are going to counter any, ballots snatching and, ballot box snatching and, if there's going to be violence at all, how that is going to be dealt with. But as we speak, some of us, I haven't seen it. I stand to be corrected, but I haven't seen anything from the EC with regards to how the security, measures they are putting in place, because obviously they would have, apart from the police or the security agencies knowing the flashpoints, the EC would also have some data. So it would be good for us to have like a map, where we have, if you go to Ododio, you go to maybe Awaso West Wagon, you go, so that we know these areas. So that once we begin to mention these names or begin to put them out there, those in that area would know that, okay, the EC, or together with the security agencies, are going to put enough measures or enough resources into these areas. So it will be a no-go area if you wanted to foment trouble on the day of election. And one other thing I've raised has to do with, can we have, specific emergency numbers for, security-related matters? So, for instance, on the 7th of December, if I go to the Issa Dafia Mapuse constituency to go vote, and I get there and there is some confrontation, usually you would have 1 or 2 police officers who are sitting down, because usually, we don't have widespread confrontations. But then you get there and there is confrontation, all-out fight. Who do you call? Do you call the 18555, or who do you report to? Are you going to call the normal police emergency line, or we have specific number that the citizens have been informed? This is the standby number. Call this number so that we can respond. These are some of the measures I think that will be reassuring when it comes to confronting the security of the elections. If we don't do that, we have suspicions and counter suspicions that something could happen. I believe that since 1992-93, we've always had this. But I do believe that at the end of the day, 7th December will come and pass, and Ghana will still be standing. That is my belief.
All right. Before we go to the flooding situation in the Northeast region, just some messages with regard to the electoral matters. Okay, it is crucial to send matters relating to elections in Ghana to court to ensure that things are done within the confines of the law. It's not about NDC or NPP, it's about Ghana. That's from Mahmoudou Sadat in Wale. Okay. All right, I'm unable to retrieve more now. So let's just move on to the flooding situation that occurred in the Northeast region. Now, just when residents were recovering from severe floods that eternally displaced nearly 14,000 residents, they were hit with another round of heavy rain on Thursday dawn that left hundreds of people homeless in 3 communities. Let's bring you this report from our correspondent there, Maxwell Sook.
The situation is grim in 3 communities, Gagbini, Dimia and Banawa in the West Mamprusa district of the Northeast region, as residents are still counting their losses following floods that hit the area in the early hours of Thursday. The residents say the effects of floods were intensified by the collapse of dams in the nearby communities, and lots of people are displaced after their homes were destroyed. Livestock and foodstuffs were not spared in the episode. Some of the affected residents shared their despair with CITI News.
We don't know. We really can't tell right now. We don't know what happened. We just got here and the road is messed up.
How long have you spent on the way?
Like 2 hours. Yeah, I think 2 hours. Okay.
A rescue team made up of officials from NADMO and the district assembly evacuated children in the affected communities to safe grounds.
We are here this morning to see how the problem will be solved. This is a natural disaster where we don't have any solution as we speak. We are calling on the experts. I've called the regional minister, then the regional NADMO directors, and I've also informed the headquarters accordingly. Who are also looking at how best we can even divide the route where the water can pass to the other side. But with that one, we have to seek permission from the highways authority.
There were others who managed to find safety by the side of a road and in a church building with their belongings. Nine persons have so far been killed in the region, and one of the affected persons, Salifu Musa, is still grieving.
All right, so that's the situation there in the northeast region. Quite an unfortunate happening there. Hundreds of people have had their homes submerged. John, yesterday the Vice President had to cut his tour short to send relief items to these people.
Yes, and it happens to be his home region. So it's very unfortunate incident. The lawyers, we call it force majeure. Sometimes you can't do much about it. But the perennial flooding situation in the north calls for a long-term solution, which the government has taken steps. We are talking about the biggest ever single investment in the northern part of our country, which is the Pualugu Dam. It's almost $1 billion investment. But the Bagre Dam overflow recently has delayed the project, and it has already affected the people, and then we also have the rains coming, so it's like a double agony in a short period. We commiserate with the families that are affected and all the people. I hope that the NADMO and all the relief agencies will be able to put some items together to go in and support them. But in the long term, we need to have these dams properly done to control this level of flooding that we keep seeing in the north. And it's also one place that sometimes rain is a blessing, it's also a curse at the same time. They need this water to do their farms. And at the same time, when it comes, it overflows and also creates much instability for them. But I believe government has been proactive. His Excellency, the Vice President himself, is leading government efforts to send support to them. So hopefully we'll be able to address this issue in the long term.
Has government been proactive? Because we had the Bagre Dam spillage a couple of weeks ago, and then following the rains this week and the dugout and the wide volta, this also happened. Until the Vice President's visit, the relief items there were not enough for the people.
We generally have a problem with NADMO. Change the name to authority, do whatever it is. If you look at the US model, for example, where you have FEMA, there's a recognition of the need for a response mechanism or structure that has a certain, and that's why it's under the office of the president, for example, that is structured in a way and decentralized enough to be able to deal with any form of natural disasters, you understand, and has a mandate that is both reactionary and preventive at the same time. We need to look at our whole response to natural disasters. Do we need to restructure NADMO, for example, in such a way that we don't, you see, with this ad hoc way of responding to some of these natural disasters, there is no natural disaster that affects us as a country that we don't know about. From earthquakes, possible earthquakes, to flooding, to what have you. We seem to know what the problem is, we know the causes, and we know the remedies. But our response architecture does not seem to have been robust enough, does not seem to be well structured enough to deal with it in such a way that you don't need the tokenism of the vice president moving it. Those are things that are symbolic, because we just need the authorities to be able to have an idea. I mean, the political authority must have an idea of what the situation is, so that the response could be either upgraded or could be changed around or moved around to respond to whatever it is. In other jurisdictions, they have a volunteer corps, for example, that is like a paramilitary, a standby force. Those things are things we should look at. They are best practices. It calls for investment, you see, but we should have it in such a way that these are things, or these are institutions that are depoliticized. They are not job for the boys, because it looks like some of these institutions are institutions where both parties are guilty of. We put people in there to make up for party, show up the numbers, find employment for party foot soldiers and all that. It's about time, for example, if we are looking at professionally training persons who have skills in responding to natural disasters, so that we staff this to the district level, so that every district has a response team, not just stockpiling corn and bear sheets and what have you, but actually having persons with the know-how, technical know-how, to deal with and perhaps back it up with some form of military training, or military backup. These are so that they are paramilitary volunteer teams, but have the necessary capacity and training to be able to deal with this as frontline emergency. It will break down the kind of numbers we see in terms of the mortality rates and those things. And I think that it will be a better way of handling some of these. It's an unfortunate situation, but it's an opportunity for change, I think, in dealing with some of these natural disasters.
All right, let me take my final break, and then we'll hear from Adam, Bona, and Franklin on this. We'll be back.
Play the golden goal on Bet Planet today with just 20 Ghana cedis. You could win a Mercedes and 100,000 Ghana cedi worth of prizes. This advert has been vetted and approved by the Gaming Commission of Ghana. Bet responsibly, not for persons below the age of 18.
On the 7th of December, you will be going to the polls to elect a member of parliament. How well do you know your constituency?
We take a visit to the Awutu Senya East constituency of the Central Region. We are coming to you from the Ishayaso constituency in the Ashanti region. I'm still in the Aswanse constituency.
Political parties will be campaigning for your vote.
We have done almost about 80 to 90 different projects across the country.
There is no single school under any electoral area that has not seen the development of Honorable Muntaka.
But as a constituent, what will inform your choice of a candidate to represent you in Parliament?
My party is my community. What program are you bringing in to solve the problem of my community?
Be involved in what concerns you. My name is Abena Nyamekye. Join me on the constituency for all you need to know concerning your socio-economic development. The constituency airs on CITI TV Mondays to Thursdays at 5:30 p.m.
Very intelligent.
Many thanks for staying with us on The Big Issue on CITI FM and CITI TV. Before the break, we were talking about the flooding situation in the northeast region of Ghana. We understand hundreds of people have been displaced. Franklin. Hello, Franklin. All right, we seem to be having some technical hitches with that connection to Franklin Cudjoe. But Adam, on the issue of the flooding situation, the talk has been about retooling NADMO, but we don't see any government doing it.
Well, it's unfortunate. I believe that all of us are with, sisters and brothers, in that part of the country. And just like Kuma did say, Bagri Dam, the spillage of, excessive water from the Bagri Dam made this particular downpour worse, because then the ground is already saturated with water. And you have most of these people live close to these water bodies because they have to farm. And they have to, most of them have animals that need to drink from these water bodies. And so these things are bound to happen. But with regards to retooling NADMO, I know we have a new law that has made NADMO an authority. But the truth is that we don't seem to have a certain fixed resource. When I say, financing that comes to NADMO, there's one thing some of us have advocated for a very long time. How much of the tax I pay goes to NADMO, for instance? Until we are able to locate that, in the scheme of things, it's going to be very difficult. Then, depending on if it's President Akufo-Addo who is a president, depending on how he sees NADMO during his tenure, of office or in office, he will put in a lot of resources. When somebody else comes and he feels that, oh, NADMO, let's leave them, they leave them. But if we are, let's say, if it's VAT, we say maybe 0.00, not whatever percent taxes or VAT we pay is going to be going to NADMO, for instance. That money could be used in planning. When I say planning, for instance, I heard my colleague panelists talk about using some reserve in terms of military, police, and sometimes even retired officers who have the technical know-how. But you need the money to be able to procure. As we speak, NADMO should have had, their own, call them boats, rescue boats. They should have had maybe choppers and all that. We can do it if we look at the institution called NADMO to be something that one day would be for all of us, because you will never know when you would have a similar situation and the state will not have the resource. So it's good the vice president is gone there to be with them and, tell them everything is going to be okay. But beyond that, what do we do? So let's begin to, as a parliamentary candidate, I would wish him well, hoping that when he goes to parliament, these are some of the things we want to see. Let's put in pragmatic measures in terms of financing sources for this state. This NADMO is so important. It's so just like security. There's a good reason why NADMO as an institution has been put under the Ministry of the Interior. It's so important. But unfortunately, I think we haven't given it the attention that is deserving. And until we do that, and you cannot leave it to just the politicians. All of us as civil society, as individuals, would have to advocate and say, why not tax us just a bit? If we had money, how much? Maybe $100 million go to the North would begin to do things quickly to bring these people, give them some relief. But unfortunately, we don't have it. So I don't really know whether in the scheme of, if you look at, because of COVID, a lot of money has gone into a lot of things. Why are we going to take the money from to go feed these people, even though we have to find the money? And so,
well, the vice president sent them some items and money as well.
Oh, that is, I believe that from his
for these people who were
I think
affected.
from his own, from the office of the vice president, he would usually have some resources. But beyond that, the Ministry of Finance should be able to say we have collected such an amount of money this year for NADMO. So this planning should go on. Give them this, give them that. But if we don't do it, and some of us have also advocated for a national security policy, which we are told is in the draft format. All these things would have encompassed, you know, because NADMO is part of our safety they are dealing with. Yeah.
Let's touch base with Franklin now. Franklin, unfortunately, I have to give you less than a minute on this. We are wrapping up. All right, looks like that connection didn't quite work. Your messages on Twitter, before I take the final comments of my studio guests. Okay, a region of your country was seized from you for 2 to 3 hours, and you're saying that we shouldn't blame the national security head. Why is he heading that ministry? That is from Dono on Twitter. Still on Twitter, Kweku Esa says, with sensitive matters, factuals are more prudent when applied than visuals. Interesting discussion, you say. Okay. There's a message here that is for you, Ni. I will commend the NDC panelist for his submissions today. It has been very constructive. That's from Jeffrey, from CAF.
That's the knee I know. Oh, yeah. Lawyers. No, he's been my senior at the bar. Oh, we've met several times. I know his level.
Okay, so you can attest to that. Ransford from Samoa says, I think the president should speak about this issue tomorrow if possible. Okay. Mahmoud Sadat in Wale Wale says, it is sad to have witnessed such a natural disaster yet again. We are pleading with the government to come to our aid in finding a lasting solution to that issue. I want to use this opportunity. Okay. All right. I cannot continue with that. There are messages from your parliamentary candidates and others. Okay. With the likes of Adam Bona, John Kuma, and Ni, Ghana will work. So I want CCTV to continue to do the good work and invite such people. That's from, okay, thank you very much. I think the general consensus is that the conversation has been quite civil in dealing with the issue. Okay, government should deal with this issue once and for all, so that it will serve as an example for others. It is not about finances, but planning. We should learn about the drainage system of the Netherlands and make use of the flood waters in the north. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Rex from Spintex, you say that the EC has lacked candor. Okay, standing from afar, it seems someone is standing behind the EC and calling the shots. All right. I'll not be able to read any more of your messages, but thank you very much for sending them through. I'll just take final parting comments from you gentlemen, starting me on,
I think that we are a country that has withstood a lot of things because we have decided that on national issues we will stand together as a country. And I think that it is important that on issues such as what we are facing, we speak together in one voice. For some unfortunate reason, well, there seems to be a thaw in the friendly relations between the president and President Mahama in terms of, but it would have been nice for them to have, taken the opportunity, to do a pick, sit together, because we haven't seen that on the election, not just on this issue, but on the election trail as well. It would be nice to see the two of them meet at maybe two of you could organize something. We need to see them together. It seems to be a bit of heated, barbs in between. It would be nice to see that.
Yes, I think they meet, except that not all meetings are made public. Of course, there's a lot of communication going on among our leaders.
All right.
And I want to assure our viewers that our country is solid. This few, militants trying to cause confusion in our country are under control.
Okay,
and
all right.
That going forward, we are all going to see
more
very
action.
decisive actions.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Our time is up. My guests were Franklin Cudjoe, President of Imani Africa. He joined us via Zoom. Kpakpo Samoa is a member of the NDC. John Kuma is the MPP's parliamentary candidate for Ejuso, and Adam Bona also joined us, as well as Chukwuemeka Eze earlier. My name is Abena Nyamekye Ampadu. I sat in for your regular host, Godfred Akoto-Boafo. Do enjoy the rest of our programs.